My father demanded I attend my golden brother's wedding, threatening to cut my tuition. They were shocked when I revealed I earned more than him. My father has always treated me as the child in the family that is overlooked. He was simply infatuated with my brother. He continues. You know what? I don't care if you got accepted to some prestigious college. You have to go to the local college because we don't want your brother to be jealous of you. So, you know what, guys? I pretended everything was fine. I replied, you know what, Dad? Okay, fine. I'll go to that college on one condition. I get to stay in the dorms. So, I lied to him. I pretended to reside in the dorms and attended the prestigious college on a scholarship he was unaware of. But when he finds out, he will erupt. What would you do if the people who had hardly noticed your presence for 3 years suddenly asked you to show up and act like a family member for one day? That would be a very hard scenario, right? I mean, it's always going to be like that with family, especially my own. Let me start at the beginning. My name is Jonas, and if you haven't figured by now, my family is quite dysfunctional. I mean it. That is, if it can even be considered a family. What do you name the individuals who gave birth to you but then abandoned you when they discovered a better version of you? Can that even be considered family? Instead than going in circles, let me state it clearly. I could have had a happy family if my parents had treated both of their children equally. But, no, my parents are a bunch of biased jerks who have been treating me as background noise for as long as I can remember, all because my brother Roman was the healthier kid. I mean, Roman was one of those healthy, adorable infants who drew everyone's attention in an instant, whereas I was the scrawny, average-looking one that no one wanted to hold. But should these things influence parents so profoundly that they begin to differentiate between their children? It shouldn't, right? But it was different for my parents, Patrick and Marin. Within a month of Roman's birth, he had become their golden kid, the infant who received universal adulation. I mean, he wasn't outstanding. He was merely the more attractive one, the main character, so everyone was drawn to him, whilst I was usually the supporting character, standing in the background, forgotten. You can imagine how dreadful my childhood must have been. My parents ignored me and just provided for my basic needs, while my egotistical brother let all of the attention get to him. Roman grew up as a pampered brat who only cared about himself. So you can picture the kind of relationship we had. I was the shy, introverted kid, and Roman turned out to be a huge fat bully. Could you imagine that? Are you being bullied by your little brother? Yeah, that was the case with me. Roman seemed to have made it his life's mission to make mine unhappy, whether by throwing wild tantrums that caused my parents to spoil my plans or by physically taking away the things I liked. Is this correct? It was a poor scenario in and of itself. Add a set of biased parents to the mix, and you can understand how terrible my upbringing was. My parents were the main reason Roman grew up to be such a brat. While Roman was showered with new toys, attention, and praise, I was never spoiled. My birthdays were a formality. My accomplishments were never particularly significant, and my job in the family was essentially that of a background prop. One time in 3rd grade, I had all A's on my report card. I was thrilled, you know? I figured maybe I'd get a pat on the back or something, but when I presented it to my mother, all she said was, "That's good," as she went on to rave about what a nice little painting Roman had done that we just had to put on the refrigerator. Yes, Roman's wonky dog drawing received center stage, while my straight A report card was placed into the garbage drawer with the other forgotten papers. So you know how things were. I felt like the neglected report card, while my brother was lauded for everything. But it wasn't just the small stuff. Oh no. Roman got to decide where we went on family trips, what we ate for dinner, and what we watched on television. Every time I attempted to select something, I was turned down. And that idiot Roman rubbed it in my face to the fullest extent possible. He was the king, and I was nothing more than his servant. So I guess you can see why I wanted to flee this hellhole as soon as I could. And I even had the perfect opportunity. I was looking to pursue a bachelor's degree and was awarded a scholarship to one of the world's finest institutions. It was a very prestigious college, the kind that assures a good career for its students. Getting a scholarship there? Oh, that is a dream. But here's the catch. It was many states away. And, like everything else in my life, my parents refused to let me have it. Click share and more to check if there is a part 2. Part 2. Do you want to discover the reason? Of course it was Roman. My parents even suggested that I attend the local institution in our state because it provided a greater opportunity and option. They reasoned that since Roman, who was not particularly bright academically, could feel bad that I had the opportunity to enroll at such a prominent college while he did not, I should stay local. What was stopping him? He could have worked his buttocks off, like I did, and received what he desired. However, none of this made sense to my parents. They told me I needed to go to the local college. You see how ludicrous this whole situation was? Somewhere in my mind, I assumed they were doing this to keep me from outshining Roman. It was as if they recognized my potential but consciously chose to disregard it. It's as if providing me with genuine support would jeopardize Roman's image as the golden child. Why else would they work so hard for me to stay at the local college while Roman, who was nothing near as ambitious, received unrivaled support? It seemed as if I was not meant to be more successful than him. That was not part of their script. But did I succumb to that foolishness? No. I'd already made significant sacrifices to keep up with the family's wacky, biased antics. But I decided I'd had enough. I told my parents that I would only attend the local college if they permitted me to live in the campus dorms. My parents agreed, a little too happily, thinking they'd persuaded me to stay at the local college. But did they actually? No chance in hell. I accepted the scholarship and relocated to another state while my parents thought I was attending a nearby college. The nicest aspect was that the prominent college I was admitted to offered the finance course I desired in just 2 years, whereas the local college required 4. So that was ideal since it meant I could graduate earlier than my parents had imagined. Honestly, it was the best decision I've ever made. Not only did I leave the hellhole my parents had created, but this college represented the pinnacle of prosperity. I say this because, shortly after graduating, I was offered a 6-figure salary and have been with the company for a year. Things are actually improving for me, since I am on the verge of receiving a promotion. I did it all. The scholarship covered 70% of the fees, and I utilized the money my father contributed to meet other expenses. Now I'm having a fantastic life. My father continues to send me money, believing that I am a student at the local college. And I have not told him to stop. I know it's kind of terrible, but I consider it retribution for the last 3 years. I've had limited communication with my relatives. There were a few checkup calls here and there, as well as 1 or 2 trips to my home over the holidays, to keep them from becoming suspicious. Aside from that, they haven't troubled me too much, and I've been able to avoid them by explaining that I've been busy with my studies. They don't seem to care anyway. I mean, why should they? They had a golden child now. My parents benefited from the fact that the only person they had to care for was no longer in their lives. I was truly satisfied with the setup. It did hurt from time to time that my folks didn't notice I had moved states away. But the melancholy was offset by the relief of not having their toxic presence around me. Truth be told, I did miss having a family. Not a dysfunctional one like mine, but rather the feeling of having a family who genuinely cared about me. Despite my friends and pleasures, I felt that something was lacking in my life. However, until this morning, it appeared difficult to correct. My father called today to tell me that Roman was getting married and that he needed me there a few days before the wedding to help with the preparations. I was taken aback. Was my father truly urging me to come home? I had been looking forward to this moment for a long time, especially since he told me I was part of the family and that he wanted everyone to be present for Roman's big day. I truly became emotional. My parents had never acknowledged me as a member of their family. They were primarily concerned with themselves and Roman. But now my father specifically wanted me to attend the wedding. It was overwhelming to receive appreciation from my parents. But then I remembered that these were the ones who had ignored me throughout my childhood. Even today, they were unaware that their eldest son lives states away. Do I really want to return to these people, only to be disregarded again, as I have been my entire life? This is where I find myself in a quandary. And I'd like to ask you all. What would you do if you were in my shoes? I miss my sense of family, and it would be wonderful to have them care about me for once. But the prospect of returning back only to have my expectations shattered again terrifies me. Should I accept their invitation and attend my brother's wedding solely for the sake of family? Or should I stick to my commitment to live far away from them and not allow them to hurt me again? Before we get into that, it's been 2 days, and I've had plenty of time to consider what I should do. In the end, I decided to keep my peace. Even though some of you may disagree with my decision, I elected not to accept my father's invitation to Roman's wedding. And honestly, it feels like the best decision I have ever made. Spoiler alert, my parents haven't changed and never will. Let me continue where I left off in my initial post. After some thinking, I texted my father, just saying that I wouldn't be able to make it. There is no lengthy explanation, no excuses. To be honest, I was not going to come. I expected some reaction, but I didn't expect the manipulation to start so early. Within an hour, my phone was flooded with text messages. First, my mother attempted to guilt trip me. She inquired if I truly wanted to miss Roman's special day. If I wanted to be that brother. And how disappointed Roman would be if I wasn't present. She went on to say how much it would mean to Roman if his older brother was there. Really? She also attempted to play the game in which you only got one family card. But here's the thing, Roman's big day meant nothing to me. Because Roman had never cared about any of my significant occasions. Not one. And yes, you only have one family. Part 3. But only if they behave appropriately, you know? So I informed my mother the same thing, I was not coming. When guilt-tripping failed, my father resorted to his own bizarre tactics. He attempted to keep it calm at first, stating things like how families should stick together on situations like these. When I still didn't move, he decided to play dirty. He called and stated that if I didn't show up for Roman's wedding, they would cease paying my tuition costs. He stated they couldn't afford for people to gossip about how one of their sons wasn't present at such an important event. Essentially, they wanted to maintain the appearance of a happy family for their friends and neighbors. As is customary, everything revolved around appearances. Not about me. Not about Roman. But what about how the family was perceived by others? That's when I really lost it. I mean, how selfish could somebody be? Threatening to cease paying my education expenses just so I may attend a wedding. It was incredibly foolish. Even more so given that I didn't care about any of the money they handed me. I responded by telling my dad, "Go ahead. Stop paying the college fees. I'm not coming to the wedding and nothing you say or threaten will change that." I still hadn't told them that I had graduated a year ago and was living states away with a six-figure salary and a life they could never have provided me. I didn't want them to know how good my life was or where I was because they would ruin everything that was going well. I know I have to tell them the truth, and I will do so shortly. But right now, I was having fun. My unwillingness to attend my brother's wedding, despite my father's warnings, enraged him. He spoke about how ungrateful I was. How I've always been difficult. And how Dad planned to withdraw my name from the local college to teach me a lesson. He said it as if it were a huge threat, as if being pulled from a place I'd never even been to would destroy me. He had no idea that the truth was just the opposite. Honestly, I couldn't stop laughing. I could have told him I had never attended the local college, but where's the fun in that, guys? So now I'm simply waiting for my father to go and try to withdraw my name from a college where I was never enrolled. I'm honestly waiting for his reaction when he discovers I no longer need him or his money. That's going to be shocking. And it's only a matter of time before my phone calls with another round of obscenities. I honestly cannot wait. Anyway, I'll keep you all posted on what happens. Until then, so long. Hello, it's Jonas again. I know it's only been a day since my last update, but the never-ending drama in my life has gotten even wilder. After my last post, I had a feeling my father would take my unwillingness to attend Roman's wedding seriously. It turns out I was correct. It all began with a phone call from him this morning, and he was furious. He was irate and wasted no time in asking me where I'd been all this time and what the heck I'd been doing with all the money he provided for my college expenses. It was like witnessing a toddler throw a tantrum because he did not get his favorite toy. Only this time, it was my father who was driven insane by the happenings around him. Apparently, after our last chat, my father went to the local college. Yes, this is when things become really fascinating. He went there to withdraw my name, simply to teach me a lesson. That guy was so crazy that he thought pulling my name from college and suspending my studies would force me to attend Roman's wedding. Clearly, he was wrong. So, obviously, when my father went to the local college, he was in for a huge surprise. The local college had no record of my enrollment. It must have been quite the spectacle. My father stood there, attempting to cancel my registration when Jonas was not present at college. I bet the revelation hit him like a blow to the belly. During our call, his bitterness over his momentary humiliation at college was evident. He wanted to know where I had been for the past 3 months and what I had been doing with all that money. But, honestly, the situation was so absurd that I couldn't stop laughing. After more harsh remarks from my father and some waiting on my part, I decided to tell him the whole truth. I told him that I had graduated on a scholarship a year ago and that the money he had been giving for my college tuition had been extremely helpful. Then I dropped the larger bomb. I informed him that I now had a 6-figure salary and was making more than him. When he inquired whether I was kidding, I could tell he was disappointed. But he realized it wasn't a joke. The fact that I was no longer the struggling student he thought I was, but rather an independent man with a fulfilling life, must have been a difficult pill for him to swallow. I was ready for whatever came next. As soon as my father understood what I had just said, he erupted, accusing me of treason for keeping them in the dark. He went on about how much he had done for me, only to be confronted with this betrayal. Done so much for me? Was he talking about how he and my mother ignored me for years to focus on their favored child? Then he came up with the most ridiculous idea imaginable. He said the only way he could forgive me was if I went to Roman's wedding and made sure there was no scandal or gossip about the family. I could not believe it. This individual was still primarily concerned with his image. I don't understand why he's suddenly fascinated with the family's image. It had never disturbed him before. Anyway, I told him I didn't need his forgiveness, and I certainly didn't want to be a part of their ruse, pretending we were all one happy family. My father, still upset, tried to persuade me to attend the wedding. He appeared frantic at this point, but I held my ground. I told him there was no way in hell I'd go to the wedding of the man who devastated my childhood. Not only that, but I informed him I was done with the drama and would cut them off. My father was shocked, but I did not remain silent. I had spent my entire childhood absorbing everything silently. But not anymore. I told him I didn't want any of them to contact me again and that they could attend their golden son's wedding without me while I enjoyed my life. My father attempted to influence me emotionally again. But this time, I wouldn't have it. Talking about how I was his kid and how I needed to attend my brother's wedding. But I was finished. I just informed him that he had only one son since he was the one they all appeared to care about, and that they could keep it that way. As I gladly cut them off, I didn't even give my father another time to respond. I quickly ended the call and blocked his phone. And here is where I am right now, officially cut off from my family's harmful presence. It's a bittersweet feeling because I never imagined things coming to this. But I am also somewhat satisfied since I know it had to be done. At least now I can live a calm life. And if all goes well, maybe I'll be able to start my own family one day. So it's been more than a month since I shut off communication with my family. I thought I was above all the drama and manipulation. But they clearly couldn't let things go so simply. A few days ago, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. It was my mother, and she was sobbing uncontrollably. I had banned all of their calls, so I was surprised to receive this one. I decided not to hang up on her because I suspected something horrible had happened. But it was nothing like that. She began telling me how much she misses me and how she simply wants her kid back. She stated she didn't care what I or Dad did. None of it mattered to her. She simply wanted me to be a member of the family again. I was perplexed. I mean, where was this energy previously? When I told them I was cutting them off, they didn't seem to mind. And now my mother wants to patch things up? Don't you think that was a bit suspicious? So I just hung up on her, telling her I'd call her later. I had a sense something wasn't right, so I contacted my aunt, my mother's sister, to see if she had any ideas. What she told me was bizarre and it verified all of my suspicions. Apparently, Roman's wedding was a complete fiasco. A massive shitstorm. His seemingly beautiful fiancée turned out to be a full-fledged fraudster. Before the wedding, she persuaded Roman, my parents, and a group of family members to put all of their savings into a dodgy, once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. And guess what? It was all a hoax. She took the money and dipped. There were no weddings. She's gone, as are my family's savings. However, it wasn't the end of it. My aunt also informed me that my parents were in even more serious difficulty than I had suspected. Apparently, my father provoked a disturbance with an employee and his family, resulting in a significant loss for his already dying firm. And then everything clicked for me. This is why he was so eager to invite me to the wedding. He wanted to salvage his image by demonstrating how much he treasured his perfect family, and all those values. But of course, that did not work. This fiasco between Roman and his fiancée just added to the negative news. So, basically, they are losing money left and right. To make matters worse, they used their house as collateral for a loan in an attempt to salvage the firm. However, this also backfired on them. And now they are likely to lose their home. They had to move into a dilapidated trailer or studio apartment because that's all they could afford. Now everything was plain to me. My mother didn't call because she missed me or wanted me back. They urgently needed me. They realized I was doing well for myself and wanted to use me as a safety net. I understood everything. They were out of options, and I was their only hope. So, I wasn't playing that game. I was not going to be dragged back into their mess, especially now that I had seen the whole picture. They didn't care about me because they were too busy catering to Roman and his needs. But here's the catch. My parents are now fighting with Roman because they blame him for everything. For the entire wedding fiasco. For all the money they've lost. It's actually pretty funny. The golden child they built their lives around has ruined everything. And, to be honest, it made me happy that they were finally realizing their mistakes. Anyway, I could care less. I'm staying out of the controversy. After my mother called, I blocked her again. I wasn't going to let her control my emotions. But did this prevent my parents from reaching out? No, absolutely not. They were needy and clingy, refusing to accept that things weren't going their way. My parents eventually showed up at my house. Do not ask me how. I'm not sure how they got the address, but I believe they badgered some of my old friends for information. However, the how does not matter. What matters is that they showed up at my door, reminding me of family values, and that, as their older son, I was their responsibility. And now, somehow, they were mine. I slammed the door in their faces, of course. They begged me to help them, claiming they were penniless and had spent their last money on a flight to meet me. That sucked for them, but I wasn't going to help. This is not the end of it. A few days later, Roman arrived at my home, practically crying and pleading for help. He stated that he missed having his big brother in his life. I'm not sure what big brother he's referring to because all I remember is him bullying me. I warned him, but he kept begging, saying mom and dad were going to cut him off shortly because they were angry with him for putting them into this problem. It was all for nothing. Roman shared the same fate as my parents. I locked the door in his face, warning him that if any of them returned, I'd call the cops. Since then, I haven't heard from any of them, and I honestly don't care. I am done with this toxic family. I'm a little sad that things with my family have come to this. Because the void they created will always be present in my life. But I'm not going to take their trash anymore, just for the sake of family. I took legal action against my sister-in-law after she tampered with my prenatal medication because I refused to name my baby after her ex-husband. My husband Luke, 29M, and I, 29F, are expecting our first child. After years of struggle with infertility, we were overjoyed to learn that I was pregnant. However, what should have been a happy occasion turned into a nightmare because of my sister-in-law, Lila, 34F, who had a terrible history, including a painful divorce after having an affair with her ex-husband's brother. While her ex-husband Joe moved on, Lila stayed unmarried, holding on to the concept of him as a member of the family despite the affair. Lila looked delighted and wanted to be a part of my pregnancy. Initially, I assumed she was simply delighted to be an aunt, but her pleasure quickly took an unusual turn. She continued offering baby names, but they were all variations of Joe's. Despite my uneasiness, I attempted to explain to her that Luke and I had previously decided not to name our kid after anyone in the family. I wanted something unique and interesting. Lila was hurt, but I assumed she'd understand. However, she continued to send us baby name lists related to Joe, believing that it would honor the family and be meaningful to them. I set boundaries, but she did not follow them. Then things took a worrying turn. I had a little pregnancy concern and was provided medicine. Lila volunteered to pick it up for me, and I agreed. The next day, after taking the prescription she provided, I felt dizzy and sick. I ended up in the emergency room, where doctors determined that the medication I was given was not what I had been prescribed. It was a considerably higher and riskier dosage for pregnancy. Initially, I assumed it was a pharmacy error, but my suspicions rose as Lila was the one who received the pills. I called her to see whether she had noticed anything unusual. Her response astonished me. She laughed at first, saying she chose a higher amount on her own because she wanted me to pay for not naming my child after her ex. She began laughing, but then went on to add that she received a bigger dose since she believed it would benefit me more. She spoke it carelessly, without regard for the potential ramifications. I was very irritated. I ended up in the ER, and she didn't appear to realize how severe her actions were. She stated she only wanted to help. I informed her that what she did was unlawful and dangerous, and it may have harmed me and my kid. Only then did she begin to apologize, but it seemed insincere. At that point, I realized I had to act. After discussing it with Luke, we decided to take legal action. We filed a police report, documented everything, and notified her that we would be pursuing charges for tampering with my prescription. I believed that this was the only way to make her understand how terrible the issue was. This circumstance has undoubtedly strained relations within the family. Lila is attempting to paint herself as the victim, claiming she had no idea it would upset me. But I can't accept it. If she truly cared about my health, she would not have changed my medicine without my knowledge, especially since I am pregnant. Some families believe we are going too far by involving the police, claiming that she was only trying to help. However, tampering with drugs is a severe matter, and good intentions do not excuse it. Now I'm torn. I'm worried I'm overreacting, especially since some family members are upset with me and claim it's harming our family. However, I believe she breached a significant threshold that cannot be overlooked. What she did may have hurt me or my baby. If I let this go, it would feel like I am enabling her to intervene in my life and jeopardize our safety simply because she felt she was helpful. I hate that it has come to this, but I feel like I have no option. Perhaps suffering legal consequences will make her realize how serious her acts were. Still, I'm questioning everything, and I'd appreciate any other perspectives. So, Reddit, AITA for pursuing legal action against my sister-in-law for interfering with my meds simply because I refused to name my child after her ex. Update 1. Hello everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for your concern regarding my health. This means a lot to me. I'm feeling a lot better now, luckily. My physicians have kept a tight check on me, and I am now back on my original medication, which is safe for my pregnancy. I wanted to give you an update on my problem with my sister-in-law Lila. Since I mentioned pursuing legal action against her for interfering with my medicine in my last report, things have shifted in unexpected ways. I was still absorbing what Lila had done and dealing with the ramifications when she contacted me. She called to apologize, stating she didn't intend for things to escalate and thought she was helpful. Initially, I wanted to trust her. I thought she was sincerely remorseful for interfering with my meds, but just as I was about to accept her apologies, she said something that completely took me off guard. She dismissed me, saying that I should realize that she merely wanted to help. It felt false, as if she was attempting to transfer blame rather than accept responsibility. That wasn't the worst part. Shortly after our conversation, I began hearing reports from other family members about what Lila had said. She was telling everyone that my baby wasn't Luke's. She said this was the reason I did not want to name the baby after a family member. I couldn't believe it. Not only was she attempting to spin the tale about her activities, but she was also putting my marriage and my child's paternity in the confusion. When I learned about this, I was filled with rage. Lila's lies were making me mad. I was attempting to protect myself and my pregnant baby, and she was spreading lies to justify her behavior. I questioned her directly, questioning why she had made such an accusation. Instead of accepting responsibility, she dismissed it as a misunderstanding and stated that she did not mean it that way. It was difficult for me to accept. Lila frequently reduced her behavior and deflected blame to others, and this seemed like just another example. She seemed to want to divert attention away from her irresponsible behavior and make me appear to be the problem in the family. The manipulation was annoying. I kept thinking about how I was attempting to protect my child and have a good pregnancy, only for her to cast doubt. After speaking with Luke, we realized that we needed to act. Luke phoned various relatives to explain the situation, claiming that Lila was spreading misinformation. We needed to protect our youngster and clarify any misconceptions about our family. The aftermath has been difficult. Some family members have shown their support, while others have reprimanded us for generating unnecessary drama. It's very frustrating since they don't comprehend the entire situation. This is more than simply names and Lila's feelings. It is about keeping my child safe. I feel like I'm battling on two fronts. Lila's manipulation and the family's misunderstandings. Lila's determination becomes clearer as time passes. She is sticking to her story, trying to portray herself as the victim. I overheard her at a family occasion telling others that I was overdramatic. The more she bends the facts, the more determined I am to remain solid. I never expected to have to approach a family member about something like this, especially at such a terrible moment in my life. Lila's behavior has also impacted my interactions with other family members. Some families are concerned about how this will affect future gatherings and relationships. I appreciate their desire to keep things peaceful, but at what cost? Do I have to pretend as if everything is fine while my sister-in-law makes false statements about my marriage and child? I won't do that. I've spoken with friends outside the family, and their advice has opened my eyes. Many people have encouraged me to remain strong and take notice of everything Lila says or does that could harm my family. It's unsettling to think about how far she'll go to prove her point or manipulate the circumstance. Now I'm trying to concentrate on my pregnancy, but I can't stop thinking about Lila's acts. I understand my right to protect my baby, but I'm also concerned about how this family strife may damage my child in the long run. Will kids hear unpleasant things about their aunt, which could harm our family's reputation? I am so frustrated and fatigued. If things get out of hand, we may have to take more drastic measures. Update 2. Hello everyone, it has been 6 months since my previous post, and I have a lot to tell you about what has been happening in my life lately. I'm on bed rest since my pregnancy has become hazardous. This means I should stay in bed as much as possible and minimize stress. Unfortunately, my sister-in-law, Lila, is making it difficult for me to rest. I feel like I'm in a nightmare. This is a sensitive time for me, and all I want to do is focus on my health and getting ready for our baby. Instead, I'm constantly concerned about what Lila will say next. Luke has been amazing throughout this. He supports me every day and makes me feel protected. He understands how badly this is impacting me and has attempted to address Lila about her actions. After months of watching me suffer, he realized he couldn't take it anymore. He and his parents contacted Lila and told her to stop telling lies. They informed her that if she didn't comply, she would be entirely cut off. We all thought that this would help her comprehend how serious the situation was and modify her conduct. Unfortunately, it had the opposite result. Lila refused to listen and made everything worse. She acted like the victim, claiming we were overreacting and that she was simply trying to help, whatever that meant. It was difficult to think she could twist the facts like that, especially given her previous behavior. I knew I needed to watch out for myself and my kid, but it was exhausting. Lila arrived at our home a few days later. I was lying in bed when I heard a big smash on the front door. Luke said, but before he could speak, she barged in. I was afraid. She began shouting, accusing me of wrecking the family. I was horrified and recognized how bad things had become. Luke swiftly stood in front of me, insisting that she go. I appreciated him stepping up, but it made me realize how hazardous the situation was. Lila finally departed, and I was afraid. I had no idea what she was going to do next, and I hated feeling this way in my own home. After discussing it with Luke, we determined we needed to take decisive action. We needed to defend ourselves from Lila. We agreed to file a restraining order against her. This was something we never imagined we would do. It felt drastic, but we couldn't ignore reality any longer. We needed to make sure we were safe, especially with the baby on the way. Obtaining a restraining order is not straightforward. We needed to meet with a lawyer, who advised us on what measures to take. We started collecting evidence of Lila's actions. It was difficult to recall all of the mistakes she had made and said, but we knew they were significant. We documented every incident in which she disseminated misinformation and made threats. Meanwhile, my anxiousness worsened. Being on bed rest gave me too much time to ponder, and I was concerned about how Lila's behavior would affect our baby. I also thought about how this could affect our family connections in the future. The prospect of raising a child in such an uncertain atmosphere was frightening. At the same time, Lila persisted. She continued to propagate her vile rumors. I began hearing from other family members about what she was saying, which made me feel sick. I wanted to enjoy my pregnancy, but instead I got caught up in the commotion. Luke did all necessary to keep me safe from the circumstances. He contacted family to explain the situation and clear up any confusion. Some family members were supportive. Others were not. Some others said we were generating too much drama by taking legal action and that we should just get along. This frustrated me since they didn't realize how bad Lila's behavior was. This wasn't just family gossip, it was about our health and safety. Lila's activities have also had an impact on our relationships with other family members. Some others are concerned about how this would impact future family gatherings. I understand that they want to keep the peace, but I can't just act like everything is fine while Lila spreads lies about us. I will not let her destructive behavior dictate our lives. I've also started telling friends outside the family about the predicament. Their support has been essential. They advise me to be tough and keep track of Lila's actions. They make me understand that I am not overreacting and that I have every right to safeguard my child. It's good to have a support network beyond my family, especially when things get stressful. We are working on securing the restraining order, but I am also trying to focus on my pregnancy right now. I truly hope we receive the restraining order because Lila's presence in our lives is becoming a hazard for everyone. I'll keep you folks updated on the results. Update 3. Hello everyone, it's been a few weeks since my previous update, and I have a lot to tell you about what's been happening. We ultimately received the restraining order against Lila, which is a huge relief, but things were pretty stressful before that, and I'd like to share that with you. Lila emailed me before we received the restraining order, which was a huge mistake. In her message, she threatened to harm me and my baby if I followed through on the restraining order. I was stunned. It was difficult to imagine that someone I thought of as family could say anything so cruel and dangerous. It seemed like she was attempting to intimidate me into quitting up. The email was filled with claims that I was the one ruining the family, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. Reading that email made me feel strange. I felt terrified and angry. How did she believe it was acceptable to threaten me? It was difficult not to let anxiety take over. I continued to be concerned about how her threats might affect my pregnancy and mental health. I couldn't let her dominate my life anymore, especially because I wanted to focus on my health and prepare for my baby. Luke was naturally angry when I showed him the email. He couldn't believe Lila had gone this far. He instantly instructed me to save it as proof. He realized we had to take her warning seriously, so we started organizing to consult with our lawyer. It was exhausting to deal with all of this while trying to remain optimistic throughout my pregnancy, but I knew I needed to be strong for my baby. While we were working on the restraining order, I couldn't stop thinking about how Lila's behavior had altered. What began as a silly quarrel had escalated into serious threats, and I was very hurt. I'd always thought of her as family, but now she appeared like a stranger who intended to hurt us rather than serve us. After a few difficult days, we went to court to file for the restraining order. I was apprehensive, but I knew it was important. With the email as proof, I thought the judge would understand how severe our situation was. During the hearing, I detailed everything that had occurred, from the prescription to the gossip to Lila's threats. I noticed that the judge was paying careful attention and taking notes. When we received the restraining order, we felt a big relief. However, I realized this was only the start of a lengthy road. Despite the restraining order, I am still uneasy. Lila had previously demonstrated her unpredictable nature, and I was concerned that she would try to contact me again, especially given her recent conduct. The concept of constantly glancing over my shoulder is exhausting. I want to enjoy my pregnancy, but instead I'm overwhelmed with anxiety. Luke and I discussed how to proceed. We knew we needed to maintain our distance from Lila, but we also didn't want to isolate ourselves from the rest of the family. This was a sensitive position. We recognized we needed to be careful what we informed our families. We didn't want to engage them in the drama, but we also needed to keep ourselves safe. It's been a wild ride since the restraining order was issued. We must consider how to handle future family functions, especially because Lila understands how to manipulate circumstances so that she appears to be the victim. Friends who still speak with her say she's attempting to elicit sympathy by stating we're overreacting and that I'm trying to turn everyone against her. It annoys me that she keeps spreading lies about us. When I hear from family about what Lila is saying, I become concerned and upset. I just want to enjoy this period in my life without any turmoil. It's hard to keep focused when I know she's attempting to cause trouble. I need to remind myself that I am not the problem here. I am doing everything I can to protect my family, and I refuse to let her rule our lives any longer. Update 4. Hello, everyone. It's been a few weeks since my previous post, and I have a lot to discuss. First and foremost, we had our baby last month, and I couldn't be happier. Holding our baby temporarily alleviated all of our fears. The joy of parenthood is beyond words, and we are grateful for our healthy kid. We named him Neil, and he's already won our hearts. Despite our joy at the arrival of our new baby, my sister-in-law Lila became concerned. As you may know, we previously secured a restraining order against her for her unpredictable conduct and threats to me and our child. It felt good to have legal protection, but I didn't anticipate things getting worse. Lila unexpectedly showed up at our house shortly after Neil's birth. I was still healing from having birth and adjusting to being a new mother. Luke had gone out on a quick errand, and I was at home with the baby. While I was in the nursery comforting Neil, I heard a big bang at the front door. At first, I thought it was someone else, but when I looked out the window, I was shocked to see Lila there, looking frantic, screaming, and demanding to see her little Joe. She was literally screaming at the top of her lungs, saying I was not letting her see her baby Joe and that she would call Child Protective Services on us if I didn't allow her in. I was so afraid. I didn't need her to arrive unexpectedly. I needed to protect my child, and I was terrified because of her. I hastily went for my phone to call Luke, but before I could touch the send button, I heard the door being pushed open. She'd gotten in. I had no idea how, but I could hear her calling my name. At that moment, I felt completely powerless. I knew I had to keep Neil safe, but I was still healing from the delivery. I took a long breath to relax myself. I elected to take Neil into the bedroom and close the door behind me. Lila was shouting, and I could hear it. She sounded quite angry. It was clear she was not going to back down easily. I saw no other way out, so I dialed 911. I told the operator what was going on, including Lila's restraining order and my concern for my own and my baby's safety. While I was speaking, Lila continued beating on the door, begging to see Neil. It was terrible to realize how desperate she was to contact us. Fortunately, the cops responded shortly. I was relieved to hear sirens approaching because it meant aid was on the way. When the officers entered, Lila was still attempting to break into the room. They intervened right away, pulling her back and attempting to calm her down. I finally opened the door after the cop told me Lila was being held down. I saw the officers speaking to her, but I was too shaken to hear what they were saying. I stayed in the bedroom, keeping Neil tight and trying to console him because the loudness was making him cry. I felt terrible that he had to experience such chaos so early in his life. The police were speaking with Lila, attempting to figure out why she had gone to our house and what her objectives were. Lila's predicament turned out to be worse than I anticipated. The police informed me that her neighbors had reported her for trespassing many times. She had been acting suspiciously, attempting to enter their homes and cause havoc. The officers also discovered that she had multiple outstanding tickets and had been arrested for drunk driving just 2 weeks before she arrived at our place. It was astonishing to discover how troubled she was. Lila was arrested for violating the restraining order. They felt it was significant, particularly given her recent actions. After the officers left with Lila, I felt safe enough to breathe again. Luke arrived shortly after and was noticeably concerned when he noticed the police cars outside. He rushed in to discover me and Neil. As soon as he walked in, I felt a great weight lifted off my shoulders. I described everything that had transpired. Luke was outraged that Lila had gone to our house, but he was grateful that the cops had handled it. We have taken steps to tighten our security. We've added more locks to the doors and installed a security camera outside. I wanted to ensure that we were safe from any further incidents. The news of what happened traveled swiftly, and family members soon called out to check on us. I felt grateful to everyone who helped and encouraged us during this difficult period. However, it was difficult to ignore Lila's persistent attempts to elicit sympathy. She began to seek sympathy from anybody willing to listen. She modified the story, portraying herself as a misunderstood family member who simply wanted to visit her nephew. Some friends who had distanced themselves but remained in touch reported that Lila insisted we were overreacting and making her life difficult, portraying herself as a victim. She conveniently ignored the threats she had made, as well as the severe reasons that prompted the restraining order. Her attempts seeking attention became increasingly desperate. As the truth came to light, we discovered that this was not her first encounter with the authorities. After Lila's arrest, we discovered that she had a far longer criminal past than we had previously imagined. She had been involved in numerous theft and fraud cases over the years, which family members had kept hidden to avoid disgrace. This was stunning, especially because Luke and I learned how much she had lied to us. It caused us to doubt if much of what we knew about her was true. Her attempts to elicit pity began to fail as more family members and friends learned about her past offenses. The compassion she sought was replaced by judgment and disappointment from practically everyone around her, as she realized she had broken numerous lines and endangered her family for her own pride. Most people had concluded they were done with her. They realized that the situation was far worse than she had represented, and her lies crumbled as her criminal record and unpredictable behavior became public. Lila is now cut off from the majority of her family because she is back in jail for her most recent misdeeds. After years of giving her opportunities, those close to her eventually recognize her true self. Luke and I are relieved that she is finally out of our lives. We have made it clear that we will not tolerate any further contact or give her another opportunity to manipulate or harm us. The entire scenario has been difficult, but knowing that we can move on with our lives, free of her manipulation and disruption, is a tremendous relief. We have taken precautions to safeguard ourselves, and especially our infant, from any future drama she may attempt to generate. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, we can fully focus on our family and raising Neil in a safe, loving environment. Lila is finally gone, providing some serenity to our family after months of tension and fear. Luke and I can now concentrate on providing a safe and loving environment for our child, free of the chaos and manipulation that Lila caused. Our family and friends have been really supportive, and it is comforting to know that we all agree on the importance of maintaining strong boundaries. It's awful how things progressed with someone we once trusted, but we've learnt the value of safeguarding our family and setting firm boundaries when necessary. It's reassuring to know that Lila and her previous activities are no longer a part of our life, and we don't have to worry about her causing any problems. This event has taught us to value our peace and safety, and that is our goal going forward. This will hopefully be my last update here. Thank you to everyone who reached out to me and encouraged me during this time. I really needed a stranger's opinion on what was going on to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. Everyone who commented on my postings was really helpful. I found out my parents will left everything to my lazy brother, despite my supporting them for years. They demanded money and smeared me online. My name is Jake, and any questions I had about my place in my family were eradicated the day I learned about the will. It wasn't even a dramatic sit-down in which my parents revealed the news. No, I discovered it purely by accident, by pure dumb luck. It happened a few months back when I was at their house, which I had been helping them pay for the past 5 years. I was in charge of the mortgage, food runs, and even house repairs, while my brother Eric did nothing. And by nothing, I mean nothing. No work, no obligations, just lying around, waiting for life to throw everything on a silver platter. My folks appeared to be more than willing to provide. That day, I was assisting my father with some paperwork because, as usual, neither of them could be bothered to figure out how to do things for themselves. He had requested me to scan some documents for him, legal and financial, and I didn't hesitate, until I saw it. There was the estate plan and last will and testament folder in the stack. I don't usually snoop, but curiosity got the better of me. After all, I had been the one to ensure they had a roof over their heads. It wasn't out of the ordinary to ponder how things were set up for the future. So I opened it. And that's when I noticed the words that made my stomach plummet. Everything, and I mean everything, was going to Eric. The house, their savings, and their property. There isn't a single mention of me, except from some general phrases like loving both of their sons equally. That is why they ensured that their golden child would inherit everything, while the son who kept them afloat received only a footnote. I felt foolish. Here I was, bending over backward for them, making sure their bills were paid on time, making sure they never went hungry, while they sat back and planned for a future in which I received nothing. And Eric? He wasn't simply lazy. He was entitled. He never raised a finger to assist them, never donated $1, yet he had persuaded them that he deserved everything. Perhaps because he was the younger son. Perhaps because they had always pampered him. Perhaps he understood just how to influence them. Whatever the reason, they'd made their decision. I sat there staring at the paper, my hands quivering with wrath and betrayal. How long did they plan this? Had they always planned for me to be their free financial safety net, offering nothing in return? Have they ever appreciated what I accomplished for them? I wasn't sure how long I'd been sitting there, but my father saw I wasn't scanning anything. "Hey, Jake, what's taking so long?" he inquired, going back into the room. I didn't even bother hiding the will. I raised it up and looked him in the eyes. "So this is how it is?" I inquired, my tone unnervingly calm. "Everything to Eric? After everything I've done for you?" My father's face paled for a second, but then he sighed, as if I were a small child having a tantrum. "Jake, it's not what you think." "Really?" I snapped. "Because it looks pretty damn clear to me. I've been paying your mortgage, helping with groceries, fixing the house up, while Eric does nothing, and you still decided he's the only one who matters?" Dad was embarrassed, but instead of explaining himself, he simply said, "It's complicated." That was it. There was no apology or attempt to defend it beyond those two worthless sentences. Just a poor apology and an eager expression, as if he was waiting for me to drop it and return to being their personal ATM. I should have gone out right then, but I wanted to hear from each of them. So I called out for my mother. When she came in and saw the will in my hands, she didn't respond well. She had the decency to appear guilty, but what she said made my fury boil. "Jake, honey, you don't need the inheritance," she whispered softly, like if she were doing me a favor. "You have a good job. You're independent. Eric, well, he struggles. We just want to make sure he's taken care of." That was the moment something inside of me shattered. They were not even ashamed. They understood exactly what they were doing, and they believed it was entirely right. They had spent years encouraging Eric's laziness, and now they planned to reward it by giving him everything while dismissing me as an afterthought. I took a long breath, tightened my jaw, and placed the will on the table. "Got it," I said, my voice strangely calm. "Glad to know where we stand." Then I turned and marched out of the house, disregarding their protests and slamming the door behind me. They had made a decision. Now it was time for me to make mine. I did not return to their place after that. I did not call. I did not check in. For the first time in years, I let them deal with their own dang problems. If they needed to mend something, they could figure it out. If they wanted groceries, they could make their own way to the store. Most importantly, what if the mortgage bill showed up? Well, I wasn't the one paying for it anymore. The hush lasted almost 2 weeks. At first, I guess they thought I was simply pouting and would crawl back like usual. Perhaps they expected me to calm down and apologize for questioning their choice. But as the days passed with no news from me, and, more significantly, no financial assistance, you could almost sense the change in their mood. Then, one afternoon, my phone vibrated. Dad messaged, "The property taxes are due." That was it. Number, "Hey, how have you been?" Number, "Sorry for what happened." Number, "We really appreciate everything you've done." Just a cold transactional message, as if I were still a walking ATM that they could access whenever they wanted. I stared at the computer for a time, almost amused by how predictable the results were. Did they truly believe they could just demand money like nothing had happened? That I would continue to serve as their financial safety net, even after they made it quite plain that I was disposable? I gently typed back, "I'm sure Eric will handle it, since the house is his and all." It took exactly 5 minutes until my mother called. I let it ring. Then another text came in. Mom messaged, "Jake, please don't be like this. We need to talk." Oh, now they wanted to speak. Now that their debts were stacking up, a reality was finally staring them in the face. I waited an hour before responding. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now you can live with it." I figured it was the end of the day. I had made my position clear, and no part of me felt terrible about it. But then Eric decided to join in. His text arrived late that evening, and the moment I saw his name appear on my phone, I knew it was going to be something nasty. Sure enough, when I opened it, I was met with utter entitlement. Eric messaged, "Dude, why are you being such a drama queen? It's not a big deal, just help them out like you always do." I almost laughed. Is this not a significant deal? He actually seemed as if I had no right to be upset about this. I wrote back, "No, I think you've got it covered, since you're the favorite and all." Eric messaged, "Oh my God, are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up, man, it's just money." Oh, suddenly it was only about money. It didn't matter anymore now that he had the inheritance. The hypocrisy was astonishing. I shot back, "Then you won't mind using some of that money to pay for the mortgage, right?" Silence. A few minutes later, my mother texted me again, this time in full guilt trip mode. Mom messaged, "Jake, we're your parents. Family takes care of each other. We did so much for you growing up, and now you're just abandoning us?" I had to take a deep breath to keep from tossing my phone across the room. Abandoning them? I'd spent years ensuring that they never had to struggle, while they coddled and rewarded Eric's lazy behavior. And now that they'd had to face the repercussions of their own actions, I was the bad guy? I was not falling for it, not this time. I replied, "You made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. Now Eric can take care of you." I can imagine my mother gasping loudly. She had a knack for playing the victim, even when she was in the wrong. A few minutes later, my father sent another text, and this one made me furious. Dad messaged, "We're not asking for much, just enough to cover the mortgage for a few more months until we figure things out. Don't be selfish." Selfish? The word caused my blood to boil. I'd been bailing them out for years, devoting my own money, time, and energy to make their lives easier. I had done all a good son should do. So, how did they repay me? I made sure I received nothing in exchange. And now that I've finally stood up for myself, I'm the one being selfish. I tightened my jaw, took a big breath, and texted back, "Number, I'm done." Then I shut off the phone. They'd made their choice. They were now going to have to live with it. The stillness lasted one day. I knew my parents would not give up so quickly, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The next morning, I received a notification on my phone, a bank transfer request. I grimaced as I unlocked my phone to check. It was from my mother. She had genuinely asked me for money. As if I were an ATM. "What is the amount?" $3,500? I looked at it in surprise, partially chuckling at the arrogance. There's no message. There's no explanation. Just a cold, blatant demand for the precise amount required to cover their outstanding mortgage. They didn't even ask anymore. They just assumed I would give in. I declined without hesitation. Not even 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mom. I let it ring. Then followed another text. Mom messaged, "Jake, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it?" I took my time before responding. "Because it's not my responsibility. Try Eric." Another call. Declined. Then another text. Mom messaged, "We're going to lose the house if you don't help us." Oh, this was an emergency. After years of exploiting me as a walking wallet, they were finally facing the repercussions. I wrote back, "Maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't matter." A few seconds later, Dad joined in. He said, "You're really going to let your parents become homeless?" That one had me laughing out loud. The manipulation was so obvious it was almost comical. They weren't broke. They were not going to be put on the streets. They simply didn't want to go into their personal savings because they were accustomed to me covering everything. I disregarded them for the remainder of the day. That night, I received an SMS from Eric. Eric messaged, "Dude, just send them the money already. You're making this a bigger deal than it is." I clenched my jaw. Did this entitled little jerk really think he could lecture me? I wrote back, "You mean the same money you're inheriting? Why don't you send it?" His response came quickly. Eric messaged, "You know I don't have that kind of cash right now, right? So now it's about affordability?" He was fine with me draining my accounts, but whenever it was his turn, he had nothing to offer. I responded, "Guess you better figure it out then, bro. You're the one they chose." No response. I went to bed feeling strangely relieved, as if I had finally broken free from years of manipulation. However, the situation worsened the following day. I was at work when I received a call from my apartment's front desk. Receptionist. "Hey, Jake, your parents are here." I almost dropped my phone. "What?" She paused before adding, "They're saying it's an emergency, and that you won't answer their calls." Oh my God. They showed up at my flat solely because I stopped paying their bills. I took a deep breath and pinched the bridge of my nose. "Please don't let them up. I'm not expecting them." There was an awkward moment. They're being kind of pushy." I clenched my jaw. "I don't care. They can leave." I hung up and instantly received a text from Mom. Mom messaged, "We downstairs. Open the door." No question. There's no explanation. Just another demand. I didn't respond. Another text message from Mom. "Jake, we're not leaving until you talk to us." I breathed sharply and stood up from my desk. They were not about to back down. Fine. I was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. I snatched my keys and stormed downstairs, my blood seething. I was not scared. I was infuriated. The sheer chutzpah of these guys to walk up uninvited at my house and demand money as if I were their personal ATM. Not even a phone call beforehand. Not even a half-hearted apologies. Just a straight-up ambush. They actually thought they could corner me into submission, like if I were a naive child? I yanked the door open, and there they were. Mom, Dad, and, of course, Eric, all standing in a close formation, as if they were preparing to hold a family intervention. Mom had her arms crossed, her typical disappointed mother expression locked and loaded. Dad stood rigid, hands in his pockets, his face a mix of frustration and entitlement, as if he couldn't believe I was forcing him to do this in person. And Eric, the tiny leech, had the guts to appear bored. Like the entire scenario was only mildly inconvenient for him. As if he was not the cause of any of this. When Mom saw me, she went into full theatrical. "Mom. Jake. Finally. We need to talk." I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. "Number you need to leave." She blinked, as if she was unable to absorb what I had just said. "Excuse me? You heard me?" My voice was calm, controlled, and firm. "You don't get to just show up at my apartment demanding money. That's insane." Dad gave a quick scoff. "Are you seriously going to let us lose the house over a petty grudge?" I gave out a frigid laugh. "A petty grudge? Oh, you mean the one where you judged I was good enough to pay your bills but not worthy of inclusion in your will? Is that a grudge?" Mom gasped and clutched her chest, as if I had just hit her. "Jake, that is not fair. We merely did what we believed was best for our family." I tilted my head. "Best for the family? You mean the best for Eric? Simply say it." Silence. A prolonged, heavy silence. Eric, who had been unusually silent until now, finally spoke up. "Look, man, I don't want to get involved in this. I did not ask for anything." I turned to him, finally letting go. "No, you simply sit back and accept all that is given to you. You are 28 years old, Eric. Get a damn job." His face grew crimson. "What the hell, dude?" I stepped closer. "You've heard me. Do you want to inherit the house? Begin acting like a homeowner. Do you want to be the golden child? Begin paying their damn bills. I'm done being your personal banker." Eric averted his gaze, his attention drawn to the sidewalk. Mom took a deep breath and refocused her guilt trip. "Jake, he's your brother." I nodded. "Yep. And I've been there for him longer than you have." Dad's face clouded. "You're being selfish?" I laughed, a genuine laugh. "Oh, that's rich coming from you." I gestured between them. "You two agreed that Eric deserved everything, while I deserved nothing. And now when it's time to pay the price for your decision, you're attempting to coerce me into repairing it for you." "Not happening." Mom's voice became sharper. "We thought you'd be mature about this." I raised an eyebrow. "Mature? You mean I should simply accept that I was betrayed and continue to pay your bills? Because, let's be honest, that's what you wanted." Dad stepped nearer, attempting to loom over me as he had when I was a child. "We reared you, Jake. We provided you with food, clothing, and everything else you needed. The least you can do is help us right now." I looked him dead in the eyes. "I already have. For years. You repaid me by cutting me out." Mom's lips twitched. We thought you'd understand. I exhaled and shook my head. Oh, I understand completely. I understand that I was never your family, but rather a paycheck. Silence. An oppressive and unmistakable silence. I turned to see Eric, who was still trying to be invisible. And you? What is your excuse? You had years to mature, organize your life, and contribute, but you didn't. You knew they'd take care of you. And when they're gone, you just expect me to step in, right? Eric eventually snapped. What would you like me to say, man? I did not ask for this. I nodded slowly. Right, you did not ask. You just benefited. His mouth opened and then closed. Nothing. He had nothing. Mom tried one final guilt trip. Jake, we are family. Family takes care of one another. I stared at her for a long time before responding. Exactly. So, why didn't you care for me? She froze. There are no words, no comebacks, nothing. I exhaled slowly, feeling lighter than I had in years. We're done here. I turned and walked back inside, shutting the door behind me. My phone buzzed before I even got back to my couch. Dad sent a new text. Wow. After everything we've done for you, are you really going to leave us? I smirked and typed back. Number, you abandoned me. I'm just now accepting it. I pressed send. Then I blocked their numbers. But I had no idea that blocking them would simply make matters worse. Things quickly spiraled out of control. Less than a day after blocking them, I began receiving posts on Facebook. My parents were never very tech-savvy, but they knew how to voice their problems online, especially when they felt self-righteous. At first, I assumed it was just my parents being dramatic. After all, that was their go-to move, blowing out family turmoil for everyone to see. But as I browsed through their feeds, I noticed it wasn't just about me no longer helping with bills. The posts were camouflaged as family affection, but they were carefully veiled attacks on me. Mom had posted something about how she didn't raise her son to be so selfish, and how true family helps each other no matter what. A number of her friends responded that I was a disappointment and so out of touch with what really matters. Then, Dad responded with his own post. So-called family members should never abandon you when you need them the most. We gave our children everything, and this is how they repay us? My son, who should be aiding us in our golden years, has decided to desert us. He tagged me and added the passive-aggressive "I hope you're happy" at the end. The real kicker, however, came from Eric. I should have known he'd join in on the drama. He published a post full of falsehoods. Some individuals believe that family is all about money. They do not realize that family is about love and sacrifice. I would do anything for my parents, but some individuals don't understand that. They're too caught up in themselves to know that true love is aiding those who reared you. He even made a disguised shot at me. I wish some people could understand what it truly means to be family. I love my parents and appreciate everything they've done for me. That was it. That was my breaking point. I sat there staring at the television, stunned. How had things come to this point? They flipped the script and made me the villain, the self-centered son who refused to support his sacrificial parents, the son who didn't appreciate all the love they gave me over the years. How could they? I had always been the one who worked hard, contributed, and never complained, and now, somehow, they had convinced themselves they were right, and they were telling everyone that I was the issue. I didn't want to react immediately. I took a step back, collected my thoughts, and waited a few hours to ensure that I wasn't acting out of rage. But when I thought about it, I decided I couldn't let them get away with it. If they were going to drag my name through the mud, I was going to correct the record. So I grabbed out my phone and began typing. I created my own Facebook account, which I kept for close friends and true family, and wrote a lengthy update. I was not interested in playing their game. I did not want to get mired down in petty back and forths. I wanted to tell the truth. This is what I wrote. I know I've been silent for the past several days, but I can't keep it up any longer. My relatives have been spreading false information about me online. They've painted me as the villain, the selfish person who refuses to assist my parents in their time of need. I'm here to set the record straight. I've always assisted my family. I've been helping with bills, paying for groceries, and supporting them in any way I can since I was able to find work. However, there comes a moment when you can no longer give without being respected. Over the years, I've seen my parents favor Eric by giving him everything, the house, the money, and the attention. Meanwhile, I was expected to continue providing without ever being treated as equal. I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, that's just how family works. But here's the truth. Family should be reciprocal. When I learned that my parents had left everything to Eric in their will, I recognized how one-sided our relationship had been. They did not give me a second thought. They've made it apparent that I'm only the one they can rely on when things go tough, not the one they truly want around unless it's convenient for them. For years, I've been responsible for paying for their lifestyle. I've paid for vacations, bills, and even assisted with things like house taxes. And for what? To be viewed as a backup plan? I am done. I am not merely a wallet from which they may withdraw money whenever they need it. I am a human being and deserve to be respected. I've earned the right to be treated like I'm important, not just when they need something from me. As for Eric, it is time for him to grow up. He's 28 years old and has never worked in his life. He has never taken responsibility for anything. My parents have been enabling him for so long that it's no surprise he's their favorite. But here's the thing, he's had plenty of time to sort his life out. And now, it is time for him to stand on his own 2 feet. Everyone who has been following this drama and supporting my parents has to understand something. Every tale has 2 sides. Indeed, family is vital. However, it's also about mutual respect. I've contributed enough for a lifetime, and I won't apologize for taking a step back. This is not me turning away from my family. This is my last decision to choose myself. And to my parents, I wish you the best, but I'm done being your doormat. When I hit the post, I felt a sense of relaxation. For the first time in my life, I was telling the world the truth. About my family, how they had used me for years, and how they had always expected me to be the one to save them, without ever considering what I needed. I wasn't going to let their story dominate my life anymore. The reactions were swift. Some people I hadn't spoken with in years came forward to show their support. A number of my cousins, acquaintances of my parents, and even some distant relatives liked the article and sent me private messages apologizing for what I had gone through. It felt liberating to finally have the truth out there, not buried beneath guilt trips and deceptive conduct. Then followed the backlash. My parents and Eric went crazy. Eric texted me, "You're a traitor? You really had to air all our business out like this? You have no respect for family." Dad called me and yelled into the phone, "You've ruined everything, Jake. You'll regret this. You'll regret cutting us off. You'll regret turning your back on your own family." But I did not regret it. Not for 1 second. I blocked them all. I was finished. And, for the first time in my life, I was free. Free of the toxic grasp they held on me for so long. As the days passed, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had had enough of being treated as less than. I was tired of always having to solve everyone else's problems. And now, I was finally free to live my life on my own terms. So no, I don't feel horrible about cutting them off. I deserved better. I still do. And from now on, I've decided to surround myself with people who value me for who I am, not for what I can offer them. It's time for me to go forward, for good. And I will. My wife called me, just a roommate, dismissing our marriage. But when I discovered her cheating, I made her leave the house for good. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's simple, free, and allows us to keep bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing collectively. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Okay, so 30 million, need to get this off my chest because things have completely gone wrong with my wife, Melissa, 28F. We've been married for 3 years and together for nearly 6. We first met in this bar through mutual friends. She wasn't supermodel hot, but she was obviously lovely and exuded a confident air that drew me in immediately. We hit it off, exchanged numbers, and began dating a few weeks later. The first couple years were actually pretty fantastic. We went on weekend getaways and met each other's families, as couples do. Her parents were a little standoffish, but whatever. We moved in together after a year. I proposed on our 2-year anniversary, and we married around 8 months later in a simple ceremony with family and close friends. I purchased a home around 6 months before the wedding. My name appears on everything since I paid the down payment with money I saved by working my ass off. For the first year of marriage, everything was well. We'd both come home from work, cook dinner together, and watch television, normal stuff. We discussed having children in a few years, but looking back, I noticed that things began to change around the 2nd year of our marriage. Melissa began to focus more on her work. She works in marketing and has started staying later at work, attending networking events, and spending less time at home. I was supportive because I thought it was good for her career. I took on extra domestic tasks so she could focus on her work. I also started paying most of the bills because she stated that she wanted to advance her job before focusing on money. It started out little, with her canceling our date evenings at the last minute due to work. She was constantly on her phone, even while we were meant to be spending time together. If I brought it up, she'd become defensive and suggest I wasn't supporting her profession. So I backed off. We stopped doing activities together on weekends. She was either too exhausted from work or had unexpected brunches and shopping outings with her pals, which I was not invited to. I began to feel as if we were simply existing in the same area without truly connecting. She told me a few months ago that her buddy group was planning a meal at a new restaurant downtown and invited me. I was genuinely surprised. She hadn't invited me to anything with her pals in months. I wasn't very excited because her buddies are largely marketing public relations professionals who only discuss work turmoil and gossip about people I don't know. But I assumed this was her way of including me more, so I went. We arrived at the restaurant and there were around 8 people in total: Melissa, me, and 6 of her friends. The room was crowded and noisy, and we ended up at this long table. I was around 3 seats away from Melissa, sandwiched between her buddy Taylor, who was chatting to someone else the entire time, and a guy I had never met before, who was addicted to his phone. Basically, I was simply sitting there sipping my soda, without participating in any conversation. No one spoke to me or even acknowledged my existence. To be honest, these things are rather usual. I was used to being the unseen husband by this point. I was spacing out, thinking about a job at work, when Melissa's friend Caitlin inquired, "So, how's married life treating you these days?" The way she stated it was strange, as if there was something underlying the question. That's when I focused on what Melissa was saying. Guys, I swear it felt like someone punched me in the stomach. Melissa snorted dismissively and replied, "Oh, please. He's just my roommate at this point. Only my roommate." I literally froze with my beer halfway to my mouth. Who is saying that about their husband? And the way she said it was not a joke. It was as if she were stating an obvious fact that everyone already knew. She even looked at me as she said it, noticing I was paying attention, but she didn't mind. What's worse? Her friends' reactions. They all laughed and nodded as if everything was perfectly normal. One of them even said, "Don't all husbands eventually become glorified roommates?" They all cracked up even more. All but one girl, Olivia. She's new to their friend group, I've only met her a few times. She did not laugh. Instead, she gave me a sympathetic gaze. At least one person in this group had a soul, I suppose. I can't remember the rest of the dinner talk. My brain was caught on loop, hearing my wife repeatedly refer to me as her roommate. I continued to eat and drink on autopilot, not saying anything but attempting to understand what had just transpired. The trouble is, she said it without looking at me. She didn't ask if I'd heard, and she didn't care, as if I wasn't even a factor in her life worth considering. Melissa was speaking about trivial topics on the way home, appearing entirely normal, while I sat there feeling as if my entire marriage had been nuked. I scarcely answered, only offering one-word answers and nods. When we arrived home, she plopped down on the couch and scrolled through Instagram like nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just completely degraded our entire relationship in front of all her pals. I stood there for a minute, waiting for her to say something, recognize what she said, apologize, anything. But nah. Nothing. That's when it occurred to me, perhaps this wasn't just a random comment. Maybe this is how she sees me? Just a man who stays in the same house and pays his bills. Not her spouse, not her partner, only her roommate. I couldn't keep it in anymore. "So, am I really just your roommate now?" I inquired, attempting to seem casual despite my feelings. Melissa looked up from her phone, angry to be interrupted. "What are you talking about? At dinner, you told your friends I'm just your roommate at this point." She rolled her eyes and returned to scrolling. "Oh my God, it was just a joke. Don't be so sensitive. That's just how we talk sometimes." "Didn't sound like a joke," I said. "Well, it was," she retorted. "You're seriously overreacting. Can we not do this right now? I'm tired." And that was all. No apologies. There's no explanation. Not even acknowledging that it might have harmed me. Simply disregarding my feelings and making it appear as if I was at blame for being sad. I didn't want to exacerbate the situation because I was still trying to process everything. Plus, I wanted to consider how to approach this. But one thing was clear, something was badly wrong in our relationship, and I couldn't deny it any longer. The next morning, I followed my usual routine on autopilot. Melissa was hurrying around as usual, barely addressing me, except to inquire whether I had seen her phone charger. It was just another routine day for her. As I drove to work, I kept revisiting that moment from supper in my thoughts. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I've worked hard for years to construct a life with this woman. I purchased the house we live in. I pay the majority of the bills. I've been assisting her career by taking on additional domestic tasks. I've been the one who has put the most effort into our connection. Meanwhile, she has been doing what? Going out with pals? Working late? Paying little attention to me? And this is how she views me. Just a guy who happens to reside in the same house. By the time I arrived at work, I had made a decision. If Melissa prefers a roommate above a husband, she will get one. During my lunch break, I opened a new bank account and transferred the majority of our money from our joint account to it. I only left enough to meet my portion of the bills for the month, not a penny more. I used to pay 80% of everything because I earned more. But roommates split the bill 50-50, right? When I went home that evening, I didn't ask Melissa about her day as I usually would. I did not inform her about my. I simply said hey, and went directly to the spare room where I keep my gaming gear. Usually, I'd wait for her to complete work before we decided on dinner. But not tonight. I ordered a pizza just for myself. When it arrived, I took a few slices and returned to my game. Melissa entered the room a few minutes later, bewildered. "Did you order pizza? Where's mine?" I shrugged, still staring at my tablet. "Oh, I just ordered for myself. Figured you'd get something if you were hungry." She waited there for a second, hoping for a more detailed explanation. When I said nothing else, she just murmured, "Okay," and exited the room. A bit later, I heard her in the kitchen preparing something. That marked the beginning of what I now call Operation Roommate. Over the next few weeks, I gradually changed how I interacted with Melissa. I stopped texting her during the day to check in. I stopped getting groceries for her. I stopped washing her clothes with mine. I stopped asking whether she needed anything when I went shopping. I stopped telling her when I was going out or when I would return home. I stopped cooking dinner for both of us. Essentially, I stopped doing all the husband's things and began acting like we were just two people sharing a shared space, like housemates. Melissa didn't appear to notice right away. Or if she did, she said nothing. She still went out a lot. Still working late. Even when she was at home, she was glued to her phone. However, after approximately a week, things began to alter. One night, she came home, opened the fridge, and gave me an irritated expression. Melissa's buddy was the only one who appeared uncomfortable when Melissa introduced me as her roommate at supper. "Hey, Jake, right?" she said, walking over. "Melissa's husband?" I nodded. "Yeah, hey, Olivia." She grinned, surprised. "I remember your name. Good memory. Didn't know you came here every morning. Their coffee is better than the office stuff." There was an awkward moment. I could sense she wanted to say something but was unsure whether she should. Finally, she stated, "I've been trying to contact out." Melissa's comments at the dinner a few weeks earlier were inappropriate. "I simply wanted you to know that not everyone felt it was hilarious." I was surprised that someone acknowledged it. "Thanks, I appreciate that. Are you all okay?" "I mean, it's not my business." I shrugged. "We're figuring things out." No way was I going to put my marital issues on someone I barely knew, even if she appeared pleasant. Olivia nodded. "Well, I hope everything works out. For what it's worth, I think you seem like a gentleman." This made me grin for the first time in weeks. "Thanks, Olivia." We ended up sitting together for about 15 minutes, just talking, and it turns out she's actually pretty cool. She works as a physical therapist, arrived to the city about 6 months ago, and met Melissa and her group through a common friend. She was easy to talk to, and it felt good to have a real conversation with someone who actually cared about what I had to say. She hesitated before saying, "Look, I know this might be weird, but if you ever need someone to talk to, here's my number." She scrawled it on a napkin and gave it to me. I honestly felt it was a bit strange, like crossing a line. I didn't know precisely what her aim was, but I thought I could use some aid. It also appeared like she was just being polite. "Thanks," I replied, slipping it into my pocket. "I might take you up on that." A few days later, I was having an especially frustrating day. Melissa had become increasingly irritated by the roommate situation, grumbling about having to contribute more to bills and calling me juvenile. Then, I discovered that someone had used our joint credit card, which I believed had been revoked but evidently wasn't, to purchase a $500 purse. 3 guesses who? I was sitting in my car in the office parking lot, angry, when I remembered Olivia's phone number and decided to call her. Perhaps she knew what Melissa was doing. So I messaged her. "Hey, this is Jake. Is the offer to chat still open?" She replied almost instantly. "Absolutely. Is everything okay?" We met for coffee after work. I didn't intend to dump everything on her, but staring into her huge, warm eyes, it all came out. The roommate joke, how Melissa had been distant for months, and how I'd initiated Operation Roommate. All of it. Olivia simply listened, asking occasional questions rather than passing judgment. When I finished, she sighed. I don't know Melissa very well, but based on what I've seen in the group, she talks about you differently when you aren't present. My stomach plummeted. How come? Olivia expressed discomfort, saying, she complains a lot and says you're boring. She feels stuck. Wow. I wasn't sure what else to say. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. No, I appreciate your honesty. Seriously. Before we went, she touched my arm. Jake, you deserve someone who's proud to be with you, not someone who treats you like an inconvenience. That hit me hard, because she was correct. For the first time, I saw Olivia. Not simply as Melissa's friend. Not just as someone who happens to be present. But as someone who observed me, who saw the cracks before I even acknowledged they existed. We began messaging after that. It was just regular conversation, how the day went, little annoyances, inside jokes, but it seemed different. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just talking to fill the silence. Someone wanted to hear what I had to say. No sighing. No eye rolls. Just a real chat with someone who cares. And man, I didn't realize how much I missed it till I got it back. Of course, Melissa didn't notice. She was too caught up in her own world, going out many nights a week with business pals, getting home late, and smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. I was not foolish. I knew where this was going, but I wanted proof before making my next step. Now, let me be clear. I'm not the suspicious kind. Really, I am not. I've been cheated on before, back in college, and I promised myself I wouldn't be that anxious partner who constantly checks phones. However, there is a distinction between being paranoid and just connecting obvious dots. Melissa was displaying all the traditional signs. Staying out late. She is being clandestine with her phone. I suddenly made new work buddies that I had never met before. Getting suited for office meetings. The cologne fragrance. I mean, come on. I needed to know for sure. The setup first, I attempted a straightforward approach. So, who is this new work friend you have been spending so much time with? I asked casually one morning. Melissa barely glanced up from her phone. What? Oh, simply members of the marketing staff. No one is interesting. Seems like you're with them a lot lately. She rolled her eyes. What are you doing with my schedule now? She then smirked and created air quotes with her fingers. I thought we were only roommates. I merely shrugged and walked away. Just making conversation, I said. It was clear that the straight approach would not work. So I made a decision that some people may condemn me for. But, whatever. I purchased an AirTag. If you're unfamiliar with the term, it refers to a little tracking gadget manufactured by Apple. You're intended to use it to find your keys or baggage, but people also use it for other purposes. I waited for a morning when Melissa was still asleep. Her automobile keys were on the counter, as usual. I quickly took them, inserted the AirTag into a little compartment in the center console, where she stores spare cash and receipts, and returned the keys. The whole thing took about 30 seconds. The truth comes out. Melissa texted the next day, stating she'd be working late again and asked not to wait. The timing was ideal for testing my new setup. Around 6 p.m., I launched the Find My app on my phone to verify the AirTag's location. It showed that her automobile was on the move. I watched her drive, not toward her downtown workplace. But I'm going to a luxury apartment complex on the city's north side. Her automobile came to a stop about 6:45 p.m. My heart pounded. Part of me hoped for an innocent explanation, like a friend living there or a work event, but deep down I knew. I watched her movements for 3 days and discovered a clear pattern. Tuesday, she told me she was having dinner with coworkers. Her car was at the same apartment complex from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Thursday, she said she had a client meeting. Car was at the apartment complex from 6:30 p.m. to nearly midnight. Throughout all of this, I texted Olivia, not telling her what I was doing, but screaming about Melissa's blatant lies. Olivia was supportive but cautious. Are you certain you want to know? She texted. Sometimes, finding out only makes things worse. I need to know, I told him. I'm tired of being played for a fool. The following Tuesday, when Melissa stated she had another late meeting, I told her I was going to grab drinks with some guys from work and wouldn't be home till late, which was obviously a lie. Instead, I parked down the street from the apartment complex and waited. Melissa's car arrived at 6:30 p.m., and I watched as she parked, checked her cosmetics in the mirror, got out, and walked to one of the buildings, typing a code at the door and entering. I sat there for maybe 15 minutes, debating what to do next. Part of me wanted to storm in, catch them in the act, and make a big scene, but what would that accomplish? More drama? No thanks. Instead, I took pictures of her car in the lot and the building she entered, then took a deep breath and drove home. Melissa was cheating on me, and now I had all the proof I needed. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I called Olivia on the way home, and when she answered, I simply stated, "You were right about everything." "Oh, Jake," she whispered softly. "I am so sorry. What are you planning to do?" "I don't know yet," I told her. "But I'm done being just her roommate." I slept in the spare room that night, and Melissa didn't notice I wasn't in our bed when she arrived home after midnight. The following day, I called in ill to work because I couldn't concentrate on spreadsheets and meetings when my marriage was collapsing. I spent the morning researching divorce lawyers and found one with positive reviews who could see me that afternoon. When I got down with him, I explained everything: the roommate comment, the infidelity, the housing issue, and our money. "So, what am I looking at here?" I inquired after explaining everything. The lawyer leaned back in his chair and said, "Well, you're in a fairly solid legal position. The house is in your name, and you owned it before marriage. Therefore it is probably protected. Having no children simplifies things. Virginia is not a no-fault state, thus her adultery could benefit you. The important question is, how contentious do you want this to be?" I considered it. "I don't want drama. I just want out." The lawyer smirked. "You're a smart man. Those who want vengeance end up paying me a lot more money." He then gave me a knowing glance. "Let's start drafting the paperwork. Meanwhile, document everything. Her absences, evidence of the affair, and financial documents. And don't tell her you're filing until we're prepared." I paid his retainer and departed feeling lighter, as if I'd finally taken control of the problem. When I arrived home, Olivia texted me. "How are you doing?" I proposed we meet for coffee, and she accepted. We met at a quiet small area a few towns away, where Melissa's pals wouldn't notice us. Olivia looked troubled when she saw me. "You look exhausted," she remarked. "Haven't been sleeping much," I admitted, absently stirring my coffee. "I met with a divorce lawyer today." Her eyes widened. "Wow, that was fast." "Once I learned for certain about the cheating, it wasn't a difficult decision. Our marriage has been dead for several months." She nodded. "I understand, but it's still a big step." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, a swift, encouraging gesture that seemed more genuine than any contact I'd had from Melissa in months. "What happens now?" she asked. "A lawyer is preparing the papers. I am gathering evidence. Then I serve her and ask her to go." "She's not going to like that." I shrugged. "Tough." She should have considered that before cheating on me. We talked for nearly 2 hours, not only about the divorce but about everything: our careers, kids, favorite movies, and vacation adventures. It was so easy to chat to Olivia. There was no judgment, no stress, just two individuals who were truly interested in what the other had to say. When we eventually said our goodbyes, she hugged me and whispered, "You'll be fine, Jake." Better than okay. For the first time in weeks, I truly believed it. Over the next few days, I kept gathering evidence, taking screenshots of our bank statements proving I paid for everything, downloading records of Melissa's credit card charges, fancy restaurants I never went to, hotel charges on nights she was supposed to be with friends, and backing up her AirTag location history. Put everything in a folder for my lawyer, Richard. Melissa, on the other hand, was entirely unconcerned, continuing with her usual schedule of getting home late, barely speaking to me, and spending weekends with friends. The arrogance of it all only increased my determination. Olivia and I texted every day at that time. Nothing untoward happened, and I was not going to be a cheater like Melissa. What about Olivia? She was the first person in a long time who genuinely cared about me. And I wasn't going to be a cheater, but we were definitely getting closer. She told me about her previous relationships, her difficult family, and I opened up about things I hadn't told anyone in years. She made me laugh when I didn't think I could, and I thought it was nice to have someone supportive through all of this. The divorce papers were ready a week later, and the lawyer suggested that Melissa be served unexpectedly, preferably with a witness present. "You want someone there who can verify how it went down," he told me. "Especially if she gets emotional or makes threats." Oh, without thinking twice, I requested Olivia to be my witness. She consented quickly. "I'll be there," she texted, "whatever you need." I chose the date for Friday night, knowing Melissa would be home. It was time to end this farce of a marriage once and for all. Friday arrived faster than I expected, and I spent the morning going over the plan with the lawyer, making sure I understood exactly what to say and how to handle various circumstances. He handed me the divorce papers in a manila envelope that felt far too light for something so significant. Olivia sent me supportive texts throughout the day. "You can do this? Stay strong. I'll be there." Simple words, but they were helpful. We decided to meet at a coffee shop near my house at 6 p.m. Melissa normally arrived home around 7 p.m. on Fridays, when she wasn't going straight to her jerk's place, and the plan was for Olivia to come over around 6:30, after which we'd wait for Melissa together. We remained there for a while, not really drinking our coffees, just passing the time, and at 6:25, we drove to my house. Olivia's automobile was far finer than I expected, a luxury SUV that must have cost a fortune. We came into the house, and I paused for a moment. It seemed strange having Olivia, Melissa's old friend, in our space. Except it wasn't our space anymore, and Olivia wasn't Melissa's friend anymore. I gave her a quick tour, pointing out different objects to break the stillness. She grinned, that little knowing smile. "You don't have to give me the real estate agent walkthrough, Jake. I'm only here for moral support." I chuckled and rubbed the back of my neck. "Yeah, guess I'm just not accustomed to, someone truly wants to be here." She angled her head, as if she were reading between the lines, and then, as we came to a halt in the living room, she reached out and adjusted my shirt collar, smoothing it down with a slight touch as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I froze. But the way she did it, so familiar and casual, made my gut knot. It had been a long time since someone touched me with affection rather than obligation. "There," she whispered, her fingertips lingering for just a second too long before she stepped back. "You're all set." I gulped and tried to ignore the heat rising up my neck. Thanks." She just smirked and plopped down on the couch, as if she had always belonged there. "Anytime." And just like that, I started seeing Olivia in a way I hadn't before. Around 7:10, I heard Melissa's car pull into the driveway. Olivia and I were sitting in the living room, the divorce papers neatly put out on the coffee table waiting. Everything was in place. The front door opened, and Melissa walked in as casually as ever, taking a few steps before she noticed us. Then halted, her eyes shifting from me to Olivia and back again. "What is going on?" she asked, her tone already defensive. "Why is she here?" I stood up and said, "We need to talk, Melissa." Her gaze clouded as she glanced at Olivia once more. "Why is she here for that? This is our house." "She's here as a witness," I added, picking up the envelope and allowing her to sense the gravity of the situation before passing it over. Melissa folded her arms. "A witness to what?" I handed her the paperwork and said, "I'm filing for divorce." The way her expression plummeted was priceless, as if her brain had short-circuited and was fumbling for an answer. "Divorce?" she echoed. She scoffed, as if grasping at straws. "Are you serious? Are you over your little roommate tantrum?" "No," I answered, unshaken. "Because you're cheating on me, and have been for months." She gave out a sharp, forced laugh. "That's ridiculous." "I am not cheating on you." "Don't," I interrupted her performance. "I know about the guy at the Parkview Apartments. I know how frequently you're there." Her face lost its color. "Did you follow me?" "What the hell, Jake?" I shook my head, amused by how fast she transferred the blame. "I didn't need to." I tapped my phone. "I have weeks of proof. Every late night. Every business function. Every ladies' night out. All leading to the same place." Her eyes shifted to Olivia, then back to me, and her shock turned into rage. "Did you trace me? That is crazy." She then pointed toward Olivia, spitting the words as if they would burn. "So you brought her here for this?" She had been yearning for this moment since the day she met you. Olivia did not react. She did not have to. I wasn't going to let Melissa change the script. "Olivia has nothing to do with this," I said with confidence. "This is about you, your choices, and the fact that you got caught." Melissa's arms tightened across her chest, shifting gears. So I botched up. "Jake, sometimes people make mistakes. That doesn't mean we throw everything away." Her voice softened and her gaze focused on mine. "We can repair this. Counseling, a fresh start. I'll stop seeing him. Let's talk about it alone." She gave Olivia a stare as if she could remove her from the room. That was when I twisted the knife. I leaned back and gave her the same blank stare she'd given me so many times. "Why are you upset anyway?" I inquired, my tone tinged with contempt. "I'm just your roommate, right? That's what you wanted." She scoffed and rolled her eyes, as if I were the one being ridiculous. "That? You're still mad about that, Jake?" "It was a joke." I nodded as if I had finally understood her argument. "Oh, right. It was a joke. Hilarious. I tilted my head. Wait, so you do joke about replacing your husband with another guy? Just checking. Her jaw tightened, but I was not finished. You were right though, I said, my voice silky. We're just roommates, and since I'm the one paying the majority of the rent, I motioned toward the door. Yeah, I'm going to need you to pack up and get the hell out of my house. She totally lost it. I started crying, screaming, throwing things, the works. He called me every name in the book, then went begging, and then back to fury. Classic manipulative tactics may have worked on me in the past, but not longer. Where am I supposed to go? She asked repeatedly, as if it were my responsibility to fix. I shrugged. I don't know. Maybe your boyfriend's place. You seem to spend enough time there already. That just made her angrier. She eventually stormed out, slamming the door so forcefully that a picture tumbled from the wall. Olivia assisted me in cleaning up the mess Melissa had left behind. That went about as well as expected, I said, attempting a joke. Olivia offered me a compassionate grin. You did great. Stood your ground. Melissa returned the next day with her friend Taylor, intending to simply move back in like nothing had happened. I'd replaced the locks. They were stuck outside, calling my phone and knocking on the door. I didn't respond, instead texting her that she could come grab her belongings on Saturday, when I'd have my brother with me. That Saturday was tense. My brother Mike arrived early, which was fortunate given that Melissa arrived with Taylor and her father. My sister-in-law's husband revealed that she had cheated and that her daughter was not his biological child during the welcome party for the new family member. After years of attempting to grow our family, my husband Brian, 40, and I, 39, recently adopted a 10-year-old girl named Stee. She is truly amazing, full of inquiry, kindness, and a quiet strength that inspires me. The entire process was difficult and emotional, but from the moment we met her, we knew she was the missing piece. We were excited to provide her with a caring home and grateful to have her in our lives. To officially welcome her, we hosted a small party for close family and friends. We were ecstatic, and because this was such a significant occasion for our family, we wanted to make the day extra special for Stee. We went all out with decorations, balloons, banners, and more, even ordering a cake with her name on it. We wanted to make sure Stee felt appreciated, accepted, and loved. We invited our entire family, including my sister-in-law Betty, 35, her daughter Violet, 7, and her husband Zane, 35, who is also my cousin. Betty is well known for indulging Violet so much that she is referred to as the family princess. Betty has always been very attached to Violet, lavishing her with care and making sure she is the star of family gatherings. She enjoys bragging about Violet's accomplishments, no matter how modest, and frequently advises that Violet be the focal point of our gatherings. Betty frequently becomes visibly sad when Violet is not the focus of attention, so we've all learned to show Violet some extra love to keep Betty happy. When I told Betty about our adoption and Stee's welcoming celebration, she was quite annoyed. Instead of praising us, she said something like, "So Violet won't be the only family princess now," before abruptly changing the subject. It was a bizarre response, but I assumed it was just jealousy that will pass. However, over the next 2 weeks, Betty began making small remarks that made me anxious. She'd say things like, "It'll be difficult for Violet to share the spotlight," or, "Not every kid knows how to be around a real princess." It felt like she was implying that Stee didn't quite measure up to Violet. I decided to let it go, figuring Betty just needed time to adjust to the fact that Violet was no longer the only grandchild. I considered holding a more low-key celebration, but I ultimately decided it was more important to make Stee feel unique and included. Finally, the big day arrived, and everything was just perfect. The decorations were stunning, and our home was filled with family and friends eager to meet Stee. Brian and I were overjoyed to see her so happy and relaxed around everyone. It felt like a fresh start for us all. When Betty, Zane, and Violet arrived, I instantly noticed Betty's awkwardness. She forced a grin, avoided eye contact, and stared at the decor with disappointment. In contrast, Zane was ecstatic to meet his niece. Despite Betty's unusual behavior, I attempted to maintain a pleasant attitude and focus on ensuring Stee's enjoyment. Betty's actions grew more noticeable as the celebration progressed. Whenever someone complimented Stee, she'd respond with something about Violet. For example, if someone admired Stee's politeness, Betty would respond by reminding everyone how nice Violet had always been. If someone complimented Stee's clothing, Betty would proudly proclaim that Violet had been dressing like a little princess since she was a newborn. It was unrelenting. She would not allow Stee to have her moment in the spotlight. The worst part was when I noticed Betty gathered with a few others in a corner. I could hear fragments of their conversation, and it was evident she was talking about us. Betty was saying things like, "Some folks just do not know how to raise a true princess," and "It takes a special kind of parent to really nurture a child." It hurt to think that Betty would go to such lengths to undermine our efforts to make Steve feel loved and included. Just as I was about to face her, something unexpected occurred. Zane, who had been relatively quiet all night, suddenly rose up and requested everyone's attention. I was taken aback. I expected he'd make a toast or say something good about Steve. Instead, he released a bombshell that had everyone dumbfounded. Zane delivered devastating news in a calm but strong tone. He revealed that he had learned Betty had cheated on him years before with one of his buddies. After considerable investigation, he discovered that Violet is not his biological daughter. He added that he had just recently accepted this and had been suffering with it for some time, but after witnessing Betty's behavior at the party, he felt compelled to speak up. He said that he was going to file for divorce and split, but he would still be there for Violet if she wanted him in her life. The room became utterly silent. Betty's face turned pale, and she was left speechless. She stood there motionless, as if she didn't understand what had happened. After a moment, she turned and fled out of the room, her face a mix of amazement and panic. Zane quickly followed, leaving everyone stunned. The rest of the party went silent, but we were able to refocus on Sty and enjoy the night. I felt a sense of comfort as I saw her grin, blissfully unaware of the familial drama that had just occurred. Despite everything, she had a terrific day, and it felt like our little family was finally coming together in the way I had always wanted. Betty has not contacted anyone since that night, and the family is torn over what happened. Some believe Zane did the right thing by standing up for himself and confronting Betty, particularly given her actions at the party. Others believe he should have kept it more private. A few family members have even indicated that I should not have had such a large welcoming party, given Betty's view of Violet as the family princess. They suggest that my actions may have prompted Betty's outburst and the subsequent family conflict. This entire affair has left me feeling torn. On the one hand, I planned the celebration to honor Sty and express her affection. On the other hand, I can't help but wonder whether I should have anticipated Betty's reaction and been more mindful of her feelings for Violet. I'm conflicted because I don't believe I should have to tone down a celebration for Sty simply to make someone else feel better. Sty deserves all of the joy, and we will not apologize for it. However, Brian and I have stated unequivocally that we will not fund her legal bills or anything else, and we intend to stay to that position. Now we're attempting to figure out how to deal with Betty's demands. Part of me wants to explain why we aren't paying and establish hard boundaries. Betty's marital problems are not our responsibility, and it is inappropriate for her to blame us. But another part of me believes it would be best to ignore her and concentrate on our family, allowing Betty to solve her own mess. Our top priority is Steve's pleasure. Hello everyone, I'm here with another update on what's been happening since my last post. Things have definitely picked up. Sty is doing wonderful and adjusting well at home, but I've noticed she's been a little quieter lately, which has me concerned. Zane recently reached out to us. He has been trying to digest everything that has transpired, but he wanted us to know he has our back and is concerned about Steve. That meant a lot, especially given the havoc Betty had created. Betty then escalated the situation by openly accusing Zane of being a poor father on social media, claiming he was leaving Violet during this difficult time. It was startling and only added gasoline to the family conflict. Many people defended Zane, which was encouraging, but it also demonstrates how far Betty has fallen. She even felt compelled to encourage both Zane and Sty. Brian and I decided to step in. We talked to Zane and agreed that he should take measures to clear the air concerning Violet and Betty. He deserves to tell his story and shield his kid from the consequences of Betty's conduct. In the midst of all this upheaval, it tears my heart to see Steve retreat. She is beginning to believe it is her fault, that if she had not entered our lives, Betty and Zane would not be experiencing these difficulties. It is difficult to watch her struggle with such intense emotions. Brian and I are doing our best to tell her that none of this is her fault and that our feelings for her remain unchanged. As we work through this difficult circumstance, I sincerely hope Betty understands the repercussions of her actions. For the time being, our first concern is Steve's health and ensuring that she feels safe and loved in our house. For the time being, our first concern is Steve's health and ensuring that she feels safe and loved in our house. Post 3. It's been approximately 4 months since my last post, and it appears that Betty is still dealing with her drama, as things are just growing worse by the day. So, remember how she accused Zane of being a bad dad? Yeah, about that. She stated he was leaving Violet during this hard moment. It was completely ludicrous, especially given she was the one who dropped Violet off at his apartment and then abandoned her. Yes, Betty just left Violet on Zane's doorway and vanished. Betty went completely offline for a few days after leaving Violet with Zane. Everyone was naturally concerned about what she would do next. Zane was panicking, nervous and frantic as he tried to contact her and find out where she had gone. He was concerned about her mental health and what it meant for Violet, who was still adjusting to everything that had transpired. Betty reappeared unexpectedly. Kind of. She sent an SMS that shocked us all. She was on vacation with the man she had an affair with and claimed she had run out of money. She asked Zane for money to help pay her trip, stating that she was having a good time but needed some financial assistance. We couldn't believe it. The audacity. It was astonishing that she had the audacity to beg for money while she was enjoying pleasure. Zane was furious when he read the message. He couldn't understand how she could forsake their child and then ask for money for a trip. It simply demonstrated how careless and inconsiderate she was towards her family. When Zane mentioned her message, it was clear she was in denial. She tried to act the victim, saying things like, "We don't understand how difficult this is for her." It was silly. She'd made her decisions, and now she's distorting the story to portray herself as the martyr. Zane didn't hold back. He informed her she was being selfish and irresponsible, and urged her to prioritize Violet's well-being before her own desires. He also indicated that he was speaking with a lawyer concerning custody and child support. This was a significant step for him, and he realized he needed to make a stance. The more they talked about it, the clearer it became that he needed to create boundaries to guarantee Violet had a stable environment going forward. Zane made it plain that he was not going to let Betty's erratic conduct interfere with Violet's life anymore. It was difficult for him, though. He wanted to give Betty a chance at being a decent parent, but her actions showed she was uninterested. She seemed more concerned with her own image and wants than with Violet's needs. On the other hand, Zane adored Violet and would go to any length for her, but he felt pressured by his family to consider Betty's views. He realized he couldn't put Violet's safety at risk merely to keep things running well with Betty or anyone else. During a family meeting, Zane was able to open out about his situation. He explained how difficult it was to accept everything and how he was attempting to be the father Violet needed. The chat provided some clarity for the family, and they began to comprehend how serious the situation was with everything going on. It felt like we were all bracing for the next big shock. Betty's unpredictable behavior put everyone on edge, and we couldn't help but wonder how far she would go to maintain the upper hand in the situation. Zane ultimately decided to proceed with the custody process. He thought it was the greatest option to provide Violet a stable home away from the havoc Betty was causing in their life. It was a difficult decision for him, but he knew it needed to be made. As we worked to disentangle this complicated family drama, it became evident that Betty was fully responsible for her conduct. She was the one who caused the problem and made the decisions that led us here. While we all hoped she would eventually realize her faults and seek assistance, we couldn't allow her to dictate how we moved ahead as a family. Stie has been a lot quieter since the family drama started. She appeared enthusiastic about her new life at first, but the tension with Betty and the pandemonium surrounding Zane had a bad effect on her. She fears she may have caused the problems between Zane and Betty. It kills my heart to see her like this. We have tried to convince her that none of this is her fault and that our feelings for her have not altered. We want her to feel safe and comfortable despite the commotion around her. Hopefully, Betty will come to her senses and stop subjecting the entire family to her drama. Update 4. Hi everyone, I haven't posted in a long time. I'm back with another update, and things have taken a severe turn. It's been a roller coaster, but I'm relieved to say that Zane has officially earned custody of Violet after everything he's been through with Betty. This feels like a tremendous win for him and, more crucially, Violet. I won't get into the legal technicalities because, frankly, I don't understand anything, but the main point is that Zane has Violet's custody. Let's look into what's going on with Betty. She has been losing control since the ruling. Instead of taking a step back and reflecting on her decisions, she has embraced the victim mindset. It's actually quite bizarre to behold. She has been shouting on social media about how unfair the court was and how Zane manipulated everything to take Violet away from her. It's as if she's in her own little world, with her as the main character, and it's just insane. She has even attempted to rally family members behind her cause, believing that if she can get enough support, everything is possible. Spoiler alert, it did not work at all. Most of us have just chosen to ignore her. Please, we are over her drama and do not want to be dragged back into it. It feels wonderful to have taken that decision as a family. One especially embarrassing moment occurred when Betty showed up uninvited to a family gathering. She barged in and demanded to speak with Zane. The tension rose as she began ranting about how unfairly she was being handled. Instead of getting caught up in her craziness, Zane politely requested her to leave. It was a watershed moment for him, and the rest of us stood with him, supporting him. Betty's behavior has remained relatively consistent since then. She lashes out, seeks sympathy, and then withdraws into her own mess. Each time she does this, she distances herself further from her family. We can all see the pattern. She thrives on attention and drama, but we are no longer providing her with either. Zane has remained focused on Violet and her needs. He understands that engaging in theatrics will throw all he is striving to construct for their daughter off balance. Instead, he has worked tirelessly to establish a caring and supportive environment for Violet, which is exactly what she requires after everything that has occurred. Betty's attempts to elicit a rise out of Zane have completely failed. She has been sending urgent texts and blogging about how cruelly she has been treated, but it is clear that her family has opted to simply ignore her. It's almost comical to watch her collapse while we focus on creating a safe atmosphere for Violet. Violet is doing quite well considering everything that has occurred. Zane is ensuring that her needs are addressed and that she feels safe at home. The contrast between Betty's chaotic existence and the steadiness Zane provides is remarkable. It's wonderful to see Violet thrive in her new surroundings. Betty's downward spiral has led her to isolate herself even further. She has lost connection with friends and relatives who are tired of her drama, and it is difficult to see someone you once cared about struggle in a similar way. But we all know she needs to accept responsibility for her actions, and we will not allow her mayhem to interrupt our lives any longer. So that's the current position. Zane now has custody of Violet, and as Betty continues to lose it, we are all focused on providing a loving and stable environment for her kid. Sadie is finally feeling better following her custody struggle with Betty. Sadie was at first unhappy and concerned that she was causing issues for the family, but now that Zane has custody of Violet and things have cooled down, she feels more secure. We have worked hard to provide a caring and joyful atmosphere for her. She is becoming more interested in family activities and talking up about her emotions. It is wonderful to see her smile and hear her joy again. Sty has also stepped up as Violet's big sister, helping her feel more connected to the family. Their friendship is growing deeper, and it's wonderful to see them support each other every day. Sty is learning that it's all right to be happy even when things are difficult. We are committed to ensuring she feels loved and happy, and it is evident that she is beginning to accept her new existence. Update 5. Hello everyone, it's been 6 months since the last update, and I'm here with another one, hopefully the last. Okay, let us get right into it. Betty was extremely distressed over the custody judgment. She was venting on social media, hoping for sympathy from anyone who would listen. It was clear she was struggling with losing custody in her upcoming divorce from Zane. Then, out of the blue, she contacted us and requested a meeting. We were all hesitant at first, given what had happened. Meeting her felt like a horrible idea, but after discussing it as a family, we decided to give her a chance. We thought it was critical to hear her perspective. Zane agreed to meet her, but made it plain he would not be drawn back into her chaos. We chose a cafe for the meeting. Betty immediately got in once we sat down. She began talking about how she couldn't bear the notion of losing her daughter. She continued saying she was going to change, that she was committed to being a better mother, and that she recognized how her actions had affected Violet. During the conversation, Betty became upset and shed some tears. She spoke of loneliness and how everything had pushed her to her limits. She continually stated that she did not want to lose either Violet or Zane. Zane was upfront with her, stating that he could no longer trust her. He highlighted that Violet's well-being was his #1 priority. She tried to persuade him they could work things out, but it was evident he had already made up his mind. He thought that the only way to protect himself and Violet was to move forward with the divorce. That is when it struck her. She had not only lost custody of her daughter, but also her final chance to save her marriage. Betty's voice grew noticeably quieter following our meeting. It seems that the truth of her situation was now setting in. The weight of her decisions weighed hard on her, and while it was a difficult revelation to swallow, I hoped it would inspire her to make serious changes. I wanted to believe she could stand up for Violet, but there was still distrust among us. Only time would tell if this new perspective was a passing fad or if she was actually committed to making an impact. In the following weeks, we noticed some changes in Betty. She began reaching out more, inquiring about Violet and expressing a desire to become more active. Zane, however wary, decided to give her some room to demonstrate her seriousness. He wasn't ready to accept her back into their lives right away, but he recognized that Violet deserved to have her mother around if Betty was truly committed to making great changes. We were all apprehensive, but we also had a glimmer of optimism that Betty was genuinely attempting to change her life. Violet, for her part, appeared a little bewildered. She periodically inquired about her mother and how she was doing. Zane answered intelligently, making sure to confirm Violet's feelings without setting her expectations too high. Zane once sat down with Violet and had an open chat about her mother. He said that Betty was working on making improvements, but they might take some time to become obvious. Violet missed her mother despite everything that had happened, and it hurt my heart to see her struggle with this. As the weeks passed, we noticed some positive changes in Betty. She started attending to therapy and tried to put her life back on track. She even contacted several family members in an attempt to restore the relationship she had separated herself from. While she impressed me, I couldn't help but feel suspicious. Zane, on the other hand, was primarily concerned with providing Violet with a stable home. He was really stepping up as a father, spending meaningful time with her and ensuring she felt loved and safe. They began a new pattern consisting of family dinners, game evenings, and weekend outings. It was wonderful to see Violet begin to relax and appreciate the good things in life again. Her current circumstance was vastly different from the chaos of the past, and it gave us all hope. However, Betty's path was not without difficulties. There were instances when she reverted to her old habits. She once sent Zane an irregular text in which she expressed her dissatisfaction with their visitation plans. It seemed like a step backward, and Zane had to tell her that he was doing his best to balance her needs and Violet's. When that happened, we could see Zane's stress level rise again. He was working hard to improve Violet's circumstances, and Betty's actions appeared to be undermining that stability. He took a step back, reminding himself not to get caught up in her drama and instead focus on what was best for their kid. Despite the ups and downs, Zane remained steadfast in his devotion. Violet's well-being remains his #1 priority. I admire his determination and how he has reclaimed control of their life after so much turmoil. It has not been easy for him, but he has shown great strength. Violet appears to be adjusting fairly well. Sure, she still worries about her mother, but she's learning that it's good to have fun even when things are bad. It's so lovely to see her laughing and playing again. We are all doing our best to create good memories with her, and it is clear that she is responding favorably. Betty's adventure, on the other hand, is a little more exciting. Some days, she demonstrates genuine potential, such as when she contacts Violet to inquire about her welfare. It appears like she is attempting to move her focus away from her own problems and toward her kid, which is a positive indicator. Still, we all know she has a long way to go before she can be a reliable presence in Violet's life. Betty recently indicated a desire to be more connected with Violet, and she appeared sincere about it. It marked a significant departure from her previous behavior, in which she frequently prioritized her personal wants. Zane is still being cautious, but has agreed to allow her some visitation time, based on her commitment to make meaningful changes. Betty appears to be making an honest effort, and it's difficult not to be optimistic about her future change. I want to believe she can be the mother Violet requires and deserves, but we're all trying to keep our expectations under control. And what about Stee? She's doing fantastic. She's an amazing angel. She has been there for Violet during this time, and everyone in the family adores her. After my father passed, my family grew distant due to our spoiled sister. Now, as I help my brother with medical bills, she demands a house. I, 36F, have 2 siblings, my brother Damon, 34M, and my sister Nancy, 28F. Simply put, Nancy was and always has been the golden kid, particularly in my mother's eyes. Dad had some wisdom. He'd periodically urge Nancy to cut it out, but he gave her far more liberty than Damon or me. Mom. Forget it. She would let Nancy get away with anything. Nancy was what my parents affectionately referred to as a surprise. She arrived considerably later than Damon and me, and I really feel the age difference contributed significantly to the special treatment. She has been handled differently since she was able to walk and talk. It's tough to pinpoint exactly how it manifested, but it was everywhere. More attention, a larger presence, constant praise, basically more of everything great. What if she misbehaved? No consequences. Mom would laugh it off like it was the cutest thing in the world. Growing up in the shadow of a beloved brother is an especially terrible experience. It reduces your self-worth. You continuously feel inadequate, as if you're always in second place, or, in my case, third. You begin to believe that no matter how hard you work, you will never be as excellent as others. The most hurtful component was Mom's outright reluctance to admit the bias. If Nancy said something cruel, and trust me, she had a skill for it, Mom would ignore our injured sentiments, stating we were overly sensitive or Nancy was joking. However, it was never a joke. You could see it in Nancy's eyes, in the small, satisfied grin she'd give. She relished making us feel small. I recall a period when I was approximately 12. I received new clothing, which I was quite excited about. Nancy took one look at me and exclaimed, "It makes you look even wider than usual." Mom just laughed and said, "Oh, Nancy, don't be silly." but I felt my face boil with humiliation. It was a consistent pattern. Our family seemed divided into two teams. Mom and Nancy against the world, and Dad, Damon, and me, who were constantly on the defensive. Even Dad wasn't a dependable teammate. He would frequently flip sides, presumably to keep the peace. So, what types of activities did Nancy do? It was a relentless assault of vitriol directed at anything and everything: my appearance, Damon's job goals, our life choices. Nothing was off bounds. She had a flair for identifying and exploiting your insecurities. The Thanksgiving situation with Damon is an excellent illustration. He was enthusiastically expressing his literary degree, his love of reading, and his desire to write. Nancy casually referred to him as an unemployed burden at the dinner table, in front of the entire extended family. The hush that ensued was deafening. Dad grumbled something about Nancy being out of line, but Mom simply smiled indulgently. Another day, after a particularly demanding week at work, I was complaining to Nancy about how fatigued I was. She pounced on that, starting into a rant about how I looked extremely haggard and how my long hours meant I'd never find a guy. She said, and I remember the exact words because they stung so badly, "You look like you haven't slept in days, and honestly, no guy wants a workaholic hag who looks like she's aged 10 years in the past too." I went utterly silent for several weeks following that. I couldn't force myself to speak to her. It wasn't only us. She treated friends, extended family, and strangers with the same casual disrespect. Anyone other than Mom was fair game. Damon and I rightly harbored considerable hatred. We despised Nancy's brutality, but we despised Mom much more for allowing it. I recall having a particularly intense debate with Damon during which I stated that we despised her for it, referring to Mom's unflinching support for Nancy's behavior. I know it seems harsh, but it's the honest truth about how we felt. I believe Nancy's physical attractiveness contributed to her difficulty coping. She appeared conventionally attractive. I know it sounds petty to admit, but it is relevant. It is simpler to disregard insults from someone you consider equal, or even someone you regard as inferior to you. However, when someone who is commonly regarded as gorgeous tells you that you are not, it is taken more seriously. It plants the seed of doubt in your mind. I began to question my own appearance and worth. Looking back, with the advantage of hindsight and therapy, I believe Nancy's relentless urge to criticize others stemmed from her own deep-seated insecurity. She did not follow a traditional career path. She dabbled in freelance graphic design, but it was more of a pastime than a profession. She depended greatly on our parents, both financially and emotionally. Perhaps she belittled others to compensate for her own perceived flaws. Damon and I tried to disregard her words. Until we were 25, things changed radically. Our father died 8 years ago, and he was, in many ways, the glue that held our fragmented family together, despite his own role in the imbalance. He wasn't ideal. He certainly tolerated Nancy's behavior more than he should have. But he was the one who periodically attempted to mediate, to smooth things over, to keep some sort of order. His death devastated their fragile connection. After he left, Damon and I began to move apart from Mom and Nancy. It began slowly, with fewer phone calls and visits. We'd still see them at big family gatherings, the rare holiday, and maybe Christmas, but only on special occasions, if we felt like it. If we wanted to, we could make that phrase our motto. Then it became an intentional decision. We actively began avoiding them. A wall, as I've learned to call it, had formed between us and them. Honestly, I liked the wall. It provided a much-needed barrier, reducing exposure to Nancy's attacks and witnessing Mom's angry enabling. Initially, following Dad's illness and final death, we made real attempts to retain communication. We felt obligated, I think. But those attempts were really strained. Each phone contact and visit felt forced and unpleasant. During those brief contacts, Mom would almost always say or do something that reinforced our need for distance. She'd make some lovely remarks about Nancy's non-existent successes or discreetly critique our decisions, reminding us of why we were pulling away in the first place. One especially embarrassing Christmas meal, Mom spent the entire evening extolling Nancy's creative talent, displaying some very horrible drawings Nancy had allegedly done for a large client, who turned out to be a distant cousin. Meanwhile, she entirely overlooked Damon's recent promotion and my successful completion of a large assignment at work. It was a vivid reminder of the dynamic we were attempting to avoid. Damon and I eventually started making excuses, which became more complicated. We were overloaded with work. We had prior engagements. We were coming down with something, anything to avoid spending time with them. We understood that the emotional cost of those contacts far exceeded any felt familial obligation. Damon and I shared a tacit, unspoken agreement. We both acknowledged the dysfunction and implicitly agreed that distance was the best option. It wasn't that we didn't want to visit after Dad died. Rather, we opted not to. It was not about insulting his memory. It was about safeguarding our own mental and emotional health. Crucially, Mom and Nancy made no meaningful effort to keep communication. They weren't continually phoning, pleading with us to come. The decision to drift away was mutual and unspoken. We were all financially stable, so there was no practical reason for frequent interaction. It was just easier to maintain different orbits. Silence was a relief. Damon suffered a serious accident a few years back and shattered his ankle. He was between jobs at the time and devoted all of his efforts and resources to the establishment of an online magazine. Money was scarce, and medical expenses were building up. As the CFO of a successful company, I volunteered to assist him in covering the bills. He originally refused, being the fiercely independent individual that he is, but I persisted. I didn't want him to spend his savings just as his magazine was ready to launch. I covered everything: his medication, the considerable physiotherapy he required, and even the cost of a full-time nurse to help him recuperate. To me, it was an obvious choice. It wasn't about the money. It was about supporting my brother, whom I actually cared about and wanted to succeed. It was an expression of sibling love and support. This gesture of charity, however, unintentionally established a hazardous precedent in the minds of Nancy and my mother. A few weeks later, Nancy called me and left me stunned. It was so bold and weird that I immediately assumed she was joking. She told me she wanted to acquire a penthouse apartment. Not just any apartment, but a penthouse, and she required my financial assistance. She defended her ridiculous request by claiming that she was embarrassed to still be living with her mother at the age of 28, and that since I had helped Damon, it was only fair that I also aid her. She carelessly forgot to disclose that she only had enough money to pay for half of the cost of this luxurious apartment. My instant reaction was a mix of disbelief and boiling rage. We rarely talked, and when we did, it was generally interrupted by Nancy's insults and hostility. And now, out of nowhere, she is asking for a large sum of money. It was surreal. We had not had a genuine, meaningful chat in years. The last time we spoke, she was busy criticizing my life choices, doubting my career, and making snarky remarks about my appearance. The audacity was amazing. I sought to understand her career, or lack thereof. She billed herself as a freelance graphic designer, although it was more of a casual pastime than a legitimate profession. She had no formal education, no degree, and no portfolio to speak of. She'd made a couple of posters for Dad's firm years ago, but they hadn't been utilized. She pretended to have a list of exclusive clients, but they were mostly family friends drawn in by Mom's constant push. It was certainly not a career that would allow me to afford a penthouse. So I gave a solid no. I told her straight out that I was not going to support her expensive lifestyle. I suggested, perhaps a little harshly, that she consider finding a real job if she wanted to purchase such pleasures. I know it wasn't the most polite response, but I was honestly taken aback by her entitlement. She took my refusal poorly, as one would expect. She went on a furious diatribe, accusing me of bias towards Damon. She screamed about how I had readily assisted him with his medical expenditures and how it was my responsibility as the eldest sibling to support her too. She entirely ignored the reality that Damon's predicament was an actual emergency, whereas hers was a self-induced craving for luxury. I tried to be calm, but my patience was getting thin. I reiterated my refusal, emphasizing that I was not a bank and was not obligated to pay her unreasonable goals. I was so disgusted by her entitlement and complete lack of self-awareness. It was as if she truly believed she deserved this penthouse simply because she was my sister. The talk quickly turned into a full-fledged dispute, with Nancy's voice reaching near hysterical levels. Finally, I said no one, and hung up the phone. I couldn't take another second of her screeching. She phoned back several times, but I ignored every call. I was finished. It was quite evident that our relationship, or whatever pretense of a relationship we had, was entirely transactional for her. She only contacted me when she wanted something, with no consideration for my sentiments or the years of awkward quiet between us. It was completely exhausting. Unsurprisingly, the drama did not end with Nancy's rage. My mother called me next, and the talk was much more aggravating. She began with a whining, passive-aggressive tone, complaining about how unfair I was to Nancy and accused me of playing favorites. She claimed I owed them anything because of my upbringing. Then she revealed an important detail. Nancy had approached our uncle, Dad's brother, who had taken over the family business, before coming to me. He had rightly turned down her plea. This exposed the extent of their desperation, and the fact that I was their second option further increased my rage. A little background: I purposely chose a career path outside of the family business. I did not want to be involved, neither did Damon. To be honest, Nancy didn't either, until it was convenient for her to pretend differently. After Dad died, his brother took over the company, and Mom lived comfortably on Dad's shares, which had been legally transferred to her as part of his will. Mom then admitted that their financial condition was fragile, owing to Nancy's lavish spending habits. She claimed that providing Nancy the money for the penthouse would make things easier for her in the future, implying that she wanted me to subsidize Nancy's lifestyle so she didn't have to. She then used the standard guilt trip, threatening no contact if I refused to comply with their requests. This was simply ludicrous, given that we were already in a position of very little interaction. I politely pointed out the contradiction, telling her that it wasn't my concern and that Nancy could get a job or stay with her until she was 35, for all I cared. My wrath, which had been building for years, suddenly erupted. I let loose a flood of pent-up rage. I told her she had no right to accuse me of favoritism because she had been doing it my entire life. I reminded her that Damon and I had made peace with her obvious preference years ago, when we accepted the truth of our broken family dynamic. I clearly explained that I owed them nothing, that I had my own life, obligations, and objectives. She responded with more ranting, accusing me of being ungrateful and disrespectful. She screamed that she never wanted to speak with me again. I chuckled. Because, really, what difference would it make? We scarcely spoke as things were. I mentioned my approaching wedding, emphasizing that I did not need her presence in my life. Then I hung off the phone and blocked her and Nancy on every platform possible. An important detail I didn't mention earlier: I should probably clarify that I am engaged to a beautiful, supportive man named Andrew, 37M. We've been together for nearly 5 years, and he's been quite understanding of the nuances of my familial situation. Initially, I considered bringing Mom and Nancy to the wedding solely out of obligation, a desire to keep some sort of family peace. But what happens following that explosive phone call? That thought went totally. However, the aftermath of the confrontation was not as simple as I had anticipated. Mom, unable to reach me directly, messaged Andrew via social media. She poured out her highly biased version of events, expressing her profound disappointment in me and announcing that she would permanently cut me off. Despite knowing I was right, I felt a little guilty. It's a bizarre, irrational feeling, that societal indoctrination that tells you that family is everything, regardless of how bad the connection is. Furthermore, Andrew first hesitated to grasp the situation properly. He is from a close-knit, caring, and supporting family. He had no idea that his mother and sister could be so cruel. He originally felt pity for Mom and Nancy, seeing them as the victimized parties. He couldn't fully realize the severity of the malfunction. This caused a temporary but major strain between us. I felt myself having to justify my conduct, explaining the situation's history once more. So, Reddit, AITA. I honestly don't believe I am, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. And thank you for reading this entire long narrative. Update 1. Fortunately, the encouragement I received online from strangers on Reddit who had read earlier sections of this story was quite affirming. Their remarks, shared experiences, and unflinching support all helped to alleviate those niggling doubts. They reminded me that I wasn't alone, that my emotions were genuine, and that I had every right to defend myself from toxic people, even if they were family members. Damon, as always, reiterated what the online trolls were saying. He reminded me of innumerable examples of Mom and Nancy's manipulative conduct, constant negativity, and complete lack of empathy. He acknowledged my feelings and assured me that I wasn't being unreasonable or overreacting. He, too, had been through it. He understood. A crucial turning point. The most significant turning point, however, was when Damon sat down with Andrew and described the problem from his perspective. He gave specific examples, went over the history of the family dynamic, and built a vivid picture of the emotional toll it had on both of us. Hearing it from Damon, who had seen the dysfunction personally, made all the difference. Andrew's opinion changed almost fast. He finally understood. He saw the problem for what it was. A toxic, extremely unhealthy familial dynamic that I needed to get away from. He apologized for his initial concerns, confessing that his own happy family experiences had blinded him to the reality of my circumstance. He even stated that his own parents would never behave in such a manner. From that point forward, Dad became my loyal supporter, totally backing my decision to cut ties with Mom and Nancy. Taking action, so we took action. We stopped them, Mr. Damon, Andrew, all of us, on all platforms. Update 2, just as I thought it was over? Just as I thought the drama was done, it took another unexpected turn. My uncle, Dad's brother, who had taken over the family business, contacted me and Damon about an urgent situation. He sounded quite anxious. Nearly frantic. He informed us that Mom was preparing to transfer a significant percentage of her company shares to Nancy. And not just any shares. She meant to offer Nancy voting shares, giving her enormous authority over the company. His reaction was quick. He thought it was a completely bad idea. A recipe for calamity. He understood, as we all did, that Nancy was completely incompetent in business. She had no experience. Complete lack of comprehension. She has absolutely no interest in anything other than her own superficial desires. Giving her vote rights in the corporation was, in his opinion, a terrible blunder that may destroy the entire operation. He stated that while Mom theoretically had voting authority, she had always deferred to his judgment. She had never interfered with the operation of the firm, trusting him to make wise decisions. He was really concerned that if Nancy took control, things would change. He saw continuous debates, power struggles, and potentially dangerous judgments motivated by Nancy's desires and Mom's blind favoritism. He plainly indicated that he did not want to be in ongoing disputes with them over every area of the firm. A difficult realization, Damon and I became instantly alarmed. We understood that the company's success was critical, not just for our uncle, but for the livelihoods of many people. We also experienced a sense of obligation. A lasting commitment to our father's legacy. So we arrived at a difficult decision. We couldn't just stand there and watch this unfold. We felt a moral obligation to intervene and try to avert what we perceived as an imminent calamity. We agreed to speak with our mother, despite our damaged relationship and the recent heated incident. We also felt a special obligation to our uncle, who had been so supportive and kind to us following Dad's death. He had, as I previously stated, watched out for us, and we couldn't in good conscience leave him to cope with this potential disaster on his own. We were concerned about the company's future, and we felt compelled to safeguard it, even if it meant confronting Mom and Nancy again. Update 3. The confrontation. We braced ourselves and went to see Mom, well expecting that Nancy would be there, and that her presence would make the conversation exponentially more difficult. We knew it would be unpleasant, but we believed it was necessary. As expected, Nancy was perched behind Mom like a deadly bird. We jumped right into the subject, expressing our strong objection to the plan to give Nancy voting shares. We labeled it an utterly ridiculous concept without holding back. Mom originally used a technique of stony silence, refusing to acknowledge our presence or worries. She completely ignored us as if we were not present in the room. Then she changed tactics, stating that we had no right to meddle in her decision and that she had no desire to engage with us. Nancy, predictably, screamed about how we were envious of her, how we had never taken the opportunity to be part of the family business, and how we were acting as if we owned the establishment. Her voice rose to a fever pitch, and her face distorted with wrath. It was an extremely unpleasant and stressful scene. I anxiously tried to argue with Mom, appealing to her sense of logic and accountability. I informed her, on several occasions, that Dad had expressly specified that he did not want any of his children involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. He had implicitly trusted his brother, our uncle, and wanted to prevent any future family squabbles or court battles. I highlighted that I had consciously selected a different career path based on Dad's intentions, out of respect for his vision. I begged her, virtually pleading with her, to reconsider her choice. To consider the probable repercussions. The harm she could cause, on the corporation, on our uncle, and on everyone who relied on the business for a living. Throughout my attempts at a calm discussion, Nancy continued to scream allegations of envy, hatred, and interference. She even threatened to call the police on us, as if we were trespassers. Intruders. In our mother's home. It was an insane display of entitlement and wrath. Nancy was probably afraid. She knew deep down that her financial security, her entire lifestyle, depended on Mom's continuing control over the corporation. She was terrified at the possibility of losing that stability and having to rely only on herself. Also, I believe Mom's silence during Nancy's outburst was purposeful, aimed to make me feel horrible, as if I was attacking her. Finally, after what seemed like an age, Mom quieted everyone. She told us, in a cold, dismissive tone, that we had been extremely disrespectful and offensive, and she instructed us to go. She stated she would consider what we had said and notify our uncle of her decision. Nancy, of course, remained at her side. Damon and I departed. We had done our best. We had made our point plainly and forcefully. We had appealed to Mom's sense of reason. To her devotion to Dad's wishes. To express her concern about the company's future. But we didn't know if it had made an impact. We hoped she'd reconsider. But we were ready for the worst. That night, I spoke with Andrew, describing the events. I assured him that even if things didn't go our way, at least we tried. Update 4. Surprising results. 2 painful weeks passed. Then, our uncle phoned us again with fantastic news. He informed us that, after great thought, Mom had decided not to give Nancy voting rights in the company. Instead, she planned to transfer preferred shares to her, which would give Nancy with a steady income but no control over the company's activities. It was a huge relief. Nancy's probable mismanagement did not pose a threat to the organization for the time being. Our uncle could continue to manage it successfully without the constant danger of interruption. Most significantly, Damon and I maintained no contact with Mom and Nancy. This was the ultimate victory. The entire scenario had been extremely distressing. It seemed weird to have to intervene in a situation that was officially not our immediate issue. However, we felt ethically bound to intervene. To defend our uncle. To respect our father's desires, and to secure the company's future. Edit. Addressing a key assumption. I should clarify something, to answer any potential questions or misconceptions. After reading earlier postings, some people concluded that Dad had abandoned us, his other children, with nothing. That is simply not true. He did leave us assets independent from the company's shares. I had not previously highlighted such assets because I did not believe they were directly related to the underlying dispute, which revolved around Nancy's entitlement and Mom's enabling behavior. To clarify, yes, we did inherit other things. Dad wasn't completely ignorant of Nancy's shortcomings. He was not, as I previously stated, in the same boat as my mother. He had a soft spot for her and indulged her more than he should have. I prefer not to focus on the bad features of his personality. I hope to remember him warmly. The essential issue is that we were never financially dependent on Mom or Nancy. We had our own resources. We have our own careers. We live our own lives. Update 5. The final fallout. So here we are, months later. The no-contact order remains firmly in force, and it has been gloriously peaceful. My wedding is only a week away. The invites have long already been sent out. And, obviously, Mom and Nancy were not on the guest list. Our relatives, with whom we still communicate, have kept us up to date on the situation. Mom and Nancy appear to be in a complete meltdown. They found out about the wedding from our uncle, who was, of course, invited. They've been aggressively attempting to sabotage the event by contacting other family members, discouraging them from attending, spreading lies and distortions about me, and portraying themselves as innocent victims. It's pitiful, predictable, and completely unsurprising. A prime illustration of their deceitful, attention-seeking behavior. They cannot bear the thought of me being happy. Of carrying on with my life without them. Breaking the cycle. My relationship with Andrew is diametrically opposed to the one I had growing up. He is loving, kind, supportive, honest. He taught me that family should not be conditional. Remember the harsh, cutting remarks Nancy used to fling at me? How could she predict I'd end up a jobless, lonely, workaholic hag? Well, the joke is on her. I am none of those things. I'm happy. I am successful. And I am going to marry the love of my life. And Damon, he is proving all of his critics wrong, including those who discounted his love of reading. My half-sister destroyed my marriage, stole the life I once had, and now she wants me to officiate her wedding, but I had a plan for revenge. My husband Jerry, 52 male, and I, 48 female, had been together for about 12 years and married for 10. We were so joyful at the beginning, you know? Every moment we spent together was a source of delight, filled our days with laughter, dreams, and the little things that made us love each other even more. We were a team, tackling life together. Our smiles were contagious, and everything seemed a little better when we were together. We soaked up the love we had, from cozy Sundays to odd date nights that just made everything feel great. Life was simple and we enjoyed every moment of it. But suddenly, things began to shift. Date nights became stressful, and the casual laughter was no longer as loud as it always was. I started noticing that he was spending more and more time on his phone than with me. Date nights were no longer lighthearted. There was a palpable strain in the air. Our happiness had begun to fade, and I couldn't escape the feeling that our relationship was slipping away from me. The intimacy we previously shared was fading, replaced by a growing distance that seemed difficult to repair. I began to suspect Jerry might be having an affair. Late-night phone calls and odd messages became too common for me to dismiss. I questioned his behavior changes, as well as the fact that he felt distant even when we were only inches apart. But Jerry ignored it, claiming that I was reading too much into his conduct and that he was simply preoccupied at work. In my gut, I knew it wasn't just paranoia. It was a feeling that our marriage was taking an unforeseen turn. On a Friday evening, I planned to surprise Jerry with a dinner date, hoping to revive our relationship. I eagerly went to his office to pick him up, anticipating a night of connection and joy. However, my elation quickly changed to regret when he sent me a message saying he would be working late owing to an onerous workload. I sighed, accepting the change in plans without letting him know I was waiting for him below. I was about to depart when I noticed Jerry exiting his employment, which surprised me. This confused me because it contradicted his message about a difficult workload. Puzzled, I watched him get into his car and drive away. I decided to follow him instinctively, with curiosity in my heart. Little did I know that what I was about to witness would rock me to my core. I followed him as he pulled into a pub. I wasn't sure what he was doing there. Why did he lie to me about this? As I quietly studied him at the bar, my greatest suspicions were clear. He was meeting a woman. I remained there, stunned, as the woman's back appeared familiar to me. The mystery woman then moved to sit in front of him, and my eyes widened in surprise as I realized it was my stepsister Karen. I could feel my legs giving out from shock, and I nearly fainted in front of the bar. While spying on them, I noticed my husband and Karen holding hands and smiling lovingly at one another. The understanding hit me like a gut punch, and I had an intense want to vomit. The overwhelming contempt, along with the betrayal, left me with a range of feelings, wondering how to respond to the extent of his deception. I recall leaving the bar in a trance, hoping Jerry wouldn't catch me. That night was the most difficult one of my life. I don't think I've sobbed this much since my dog died last year. It was terrible to realize that the person I intended to spend the rest of my life with was cheating on me with my own stepsister. For some perspective on my stepsister, my parents divorced when I was very young, and my mother married her new husband Harry. Harry had a daughter from his previous marriage, Karen. Karen and I hit it off right away, despite our 4-year age difference. However, our relationship began to deteriorate as I became aware of her ability to manipulate others. She showed to be a master of deception, easily manipulating any circumstance to her benefit. Karen's manipulative abilities were unrivaled, whether it was lying to our parents to evade punishments or misleading total strangers without thinking twice. Karen was constantly jealous of me, despite the fact that we both came from shattered homes. No matter how hard I tried, she never liked me. As we grew older and eventually went to college, I saw less of her. I received a full-ride scholarship and enjoyed my college years, making new friends, trying new classes, and relishing the freedom of youth. I started coming home less and less, and eventually stopped talking to Karen except at family gatherings. Even though I kept my distance from Karen, she continued to be mean to me over the years. She would make subtle but nasty remarks about my appearance whenever we were alone at family gatherings. Whether it was a criticism about my wardrobe or a sneaky suggestion about how I should go to the gym more regularly, her words were always intended to undermine my confidence. I always tried to disregard these comments as much as possible. Karen didn't stop there. She would frequently be overly nice with my husband, who was then my boyfriend. She would make comments to him about how he deserved someone more attractive or how amazing his gym images were. Jerry used to look visibly embarrassed and flush when she complimented him. I always assumed it was just Karen being Karen. She was always inappropriate with everyone I dated and introduced to my family. Since my marriage to Jerry, she had toned down her flirty behavior, and I never gave it any attention. But after seeing them together tonight in the pub, I was convinced that this had been going on for a while. They appeared to be comfy and familiar with one another. When Jerry came back that night, I pretended to be asleep. He reeked of liquor and sweat and didn't even try to hide it. His arrogant demeanor hinted at his growing arrogance. He had begun to believe that he could just get away with anything like this. I lay awake all night, worrying about my next steps. Before Jerry awoke, I discreetly removed his phone from our bedroom to check through it. Checking his messages, calls, emails, and images, I meticulously documented proof by taking shots using my own phone. That morning, after Jerry had left for work, I decided to drive to my mother's house because I felt she was the only person who could console me. My stepfather was at work, so I felt I could speak with my mother in private. When I told my mother about my husband's romance with my stepsister, she was as startled as I was. She almost didn't believe me until I presented all the proof. She was outraged that Jerry and Karen could perform such a heinous act. My mother, being the rock she is, instantly planned to confront them in front of everyone. I could understand how upset she was since she had always treated Karen as if she were her own daughter when we were younger. We couldn't comprehend how my own stepsister could stab me in the back like this. We devised a plan to invite our close family members to supper at my place over the weekend. My mother advised me to keep my lips shut and not tell Jerry about it. Everyone arrived at the gathering looking refreshed and pleased. We all ate supper together, and while people drank wine, I looked at my mother and nodded, signifying that it was time. She understood and stood up to retrieve the projector. I clinked my glass to grab everyone's attention. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," I began, my voice firm despite the tempest of emotions within me. "I've called you all here for a special reason, something I've been struggling with for a long time. I want you to pay attention to the projector because I have a surprise for you." Curiosity filled the room as my family and friends focused their attention on the projection screen. My mother had set up the gadget, and I took a deep breath, preparing to reveal the awful truth. I connected it to my phone and started scrolling through the photographs and messages I'd saved from my husband's phone. The room fell silent as everyone focused on the television. The first image appeared, showing Jerry and Karen in an intimate stance. Gasps and murmurs echoed around the room. Everyone glanced at it, bewildered. "This is not easy for me, but I felt you all needed to know the truth," I said, my voice steady. "These pictures and messages are evidence of an affair between my husband, Jerry, and my stepsister Karen." The room erupted with amazement, indignation, and shock. As they witnessed the evidence, their eyes widened and their jaws dropped. My mother's expression was a mix of rage and sorrow, and I could feel the tension rising. She stood beside me, holding my hand, silently reassuring me that she had my back. I continued scrolling through the devastating letters, revealing the extent of the betrayal. As I divulged more, everyone's shock morphed into palpable fury. I turned to face Jerry and Karen, who were sitting in startled silence. Jerry's face flushed with guilt, while Karen, formerly manipulative and shrewd, appeared little and vulnerable. The room appeared to vibrate with the combined wrath of those present. My mother stepped forward, her voice stern and full of disappointment. "How could you do this to our family? To your spouse? Your sister?" she demanded, her gaze fixed on Jerry and Karen. My stepfather looked directly at Karen and asked whether what I had revealed was accurate. Karen fell into tears, unwilling to confront him. The weight of his remarks appeared to crush her. Other family members expressed their own disbelief and fury. Some people exchanged looks and shook their heads, while others murmured harsh remarks to one another. Jerry and Karen sat there, unable to justify their actions in the face of incriminating evidence and furious emotions. The room pulsated with the weight of the truth, and my heart, though heavy, felt strangely relieved. The secret was out, and the lie was exposed for all to see. I spoke up again, addressing the audience. "I didn't come to you all here simply to expose them. I also wanted to let you know that I'm divorcing Jerry. If Karen wants my husband, she may have him. I appreciate everyone's compassion and support during this tough time." As the shock evolved to solidarity, the entire room rallied in my favor. Friends and family sent words of consolation and condemnation to Jerry and Karen. Jerry's face turned scarlet, and he walked away humiliated. Karen followed him, evidently looking for an excuse to get out of the situation. My mother held me, and I started crying. I had kept this agony hidden inside me all along, and suddenly it was coming out. In the months after this tragedy, I found myself emotionally exhausted, unable to muster the strength to get out of bed. The weight of the betrayal, along with the tiredness of innumerable tears, had left me feeling like a hollow shell of myself. Sleep had become both a haven and an escape from my harsh life. I kicked Jerry out of our house while we worked through our divorce. It was a long and difficult path, but I knew I wanted to get divorced from him as soon as possible. 2 days ago, following months of legal proceedings, the court granted us our wish. We were formally separated. I was overjoyed and spent the day with my mother, shopping and eating ice cream. For the first time in years, I felt liberated and free. That evening, when we were seated and watching a movie at my mother's house, my stepfather entered the room, looking upset. My mother asked him what was wrong, but he looked at me with worry. I sat up straight and asked him what had occurred. He asked if I had seen Karen's recent Facebook post. I shook my head and promptly unlocked my phone, looking for her profile. With bated breath, I went on her profile to see her most recent picture with Jerry. They were smiling and looked at each other with love. She captioned it, "So happy to be engaged." As I read the caption, my breath came to a stop. Then I realized, she was wearing a ring. I was very stunned to say the least. My mother, who was staring at me curiously, seized the phone from my grasp and cried out in surprise, understanding that Karen was truly marrying Jerry. I can't recall what transpired the rest of the night. Overwhelmed by shock and amazement, I sunk back into the couch, my mind whirling with a barrage of emotions. The room seemed to press in on me as I wrestled with the truth of the situation. My mother, who was similarly astonished, attempted to console me, but words failed us both. As if things weren't awful enough, my stepfather received a call from Karen. She was presumably calling to tell him about the news. I asked him to put her on speaker so I could hear what she had to say. My stepfather nodded and took up the phone. He calmly listened as Karen raved about her engagement and how excited she was to marry Jerry. I listened to her words, devastated and absolutely empty inside. My stepdad then furiously interrupted her. "Karen, what you did today is not only disrespectful and hurtful to your stepsister, but it will have far-reaching consequences for the entire family." Karen answered, apparently upset by his reaction. "I don't understand, Dad. Jerry and I are in love and we're getting married. What's wrong with celebrating that?" My stepdad chided me. "What's wrong, Karen, is the way you've gone about it. You had an affair and you think that's okay? Your actions have caused immense pain to someone you should consider family. Instead of being respectful and understanding, you are now flaunting your engagement in front of her and the rest of us without a thought for the consequences." Hearing his remarks, I burst into tears while my mother consoled me. I suppose this is when Karen learned my stepfather wasn't alone. She asked if I was in the room, and he confirmed. Karen then began pleading with me for a conversation. My stepfather glanced at me curiously, so I took the phone from him. I started asking her whether she realized what she was getting herself into. Karen smirked when she heard my voice and informed me she knew what she was getting into. She went on to suggest that I shouldn't be sobbing about Jerry because we were officially split and he was now free to marry her. As if that wasn't enough, Karen dropped another bombshell. Jerry and she wanted me to attend their wedding and bless them on their new path. Hearing her remarks, I felt a mixture of shock, rage, and incredulity. They wanted me to present a mask of acceptance, togetherness, and happiness when, in truth, I was dealing with the shattered shards of my own heart. The entire event felt like a sick joke on me. She began discussing how much it would mean to them if I could give a speech on their big day, indicating to everyone that I was fine with their wedding. I was stunned and at a loss for words. Without hesitation, my mother grabbed the phone from my grasp and addressed Karen directly. She stated unequivocally that Karen's actions were abhorrent and represented a new low. Karen responded angrily, stating that she and Jerry were in love and demanding that the family accept their relationship. I left my parents to deal with Karen and went to the guest bedroom, where I closed myself in and cried. I don't recall anything from the night. The next morning, I awoke angry and determined. Karen's audacious deeds kindled a fire within me. Instead than letting this knowledge devastate me, I resolved to turn the tables. I knew I had to tackle it head on and come out stronger. I wasn't going to let them take away my happiness and mental tranquility. I had a plan in my head and was determined to make Karen regret inviting me. I opened my laptop and began browsing her social media pages. I went through every social media picture she'd ever uploaded. As luck would have it, I eventually located what I was looking for. I convened a family meeting and described my intentions. I would go to Karen and Jerry's engagement party, but not alone. I would be inviting a very important guest to be my +1, unbeknownst to Jerry and Karen. My mother glanced at me curiously as I mentioned that I would be accompanying her ex-boyfriend from college, Ron. Ron was apparently my stepsister's great love, and she even had a tattoo of his name from when they were dating. They had a painful breakup, and I knew she would be shocked to find me arm in arm with her ex. My mother's eyes widened with recognition. I gave her a cheeky look. She gave me a gentle nod of assent, indicating that she understood my plan. My stepfather, on the other hand, believed this was going too far and warned me not to ruin my stepsister's wedding. So, Reddit, do you think I'm an a-hole for inviting my stepsister's ex to her wedding after she opted to sleep with and marry my husband? Update 1. It's been a few days since I last posted an update to my narrative. Thank you for your comments. I'm astonished how many of you understand and encourage my petty behavior. I'll confess that I wanted to be the bigger person at first, but seeing Karen update more and more of her engagement photos with Jerry officially reinforced my plan, and I set it in motion. I sent Ron a friend request on Facebook and messaged him once he accepted. To my amazement, he replied, and we began communicating. I was open with him about my identification as Karen's stepsister and her soon-to-be husband's ex. I informed him of my intention to invite him as my +1 to their wedding. He appeared surprised and curious about why I was contacting him, but I explained everything. I informed him that Karen had cheated on me with my own husband and was now marrying him. I told him I wanted to take him with me so I could make Karen feel the same way she did for me. After hearing everything, Ron agreed to accompany me. I get aroused thinking about the expressions on Jerry and Karen's faces when they see me at their wedding with Ron. My stepfather has no idea I'm going to take Ron. After our recent chat, in which he discouraged me from bringing him as my +1 to Karen's wedding, I've decided to keep this knowledge private for the time being. I will notify you when the wedding takes place in a few days. Update 2, it's been a month since I last updated. As much as I wanted to update you earlier, a lot has happened in my life, and I needed some time to calm down. As I previously stated, I did take Ron with me to the wedding. When their wedding day arrived, I put on a brave face. I strolled into their wedding in Ron's arms, dressed with confidence. Jerry's eyes widened as he noticed me going in with my special guest. He must have identified Ron as Karen's ex right away. We disregarded his face and pretended to locate our assigned seats. Jerry approached me and aggressively said, "Why are you there with Karen's ex?" But I just grinned. He couldn't make a scene in front of everyone and had to reluctantly walk back up the aisle, angrily staring at me. When it was time for the bride to enter, everyone stood up from their chairs. Karen, dressed in her wedding gown, entered with my stepfather. She recognized me among the guests and smiled triumphantly. I replied with a smirk, refusing to show her my vulnerability. Then she saw Ron standing next to me and stopped dead in her tracks. The music continued, and my stepfather begged her to keep walking, but Karen refused. Her gaze moved between me and him, possibly still perplexed. I held my head high and maintained a calm posture. When my stepfather observed Karen staring at me, he looked up at both me and Ron and must have realized what was going on. The air in the room swelled with tension, and I could feel the guests' collective curiosity growing. Karen surged toward me and came to a halt in front of us, her face distorted with a combustible combination of rage and disbelief. "Congratulations, Karen," I answered calmly. "I'm genuinely happy for you both." "What the hell is this?" she said, her voice angry. I met her gaze with an unwavering stare. "This, Karen, is my +1, I said with a hint of delight in my voice. "Meet Ron. You remember him, right? From your college days? Or should I mention the tattoo on your hand?" I continued, loving her stunned expression. Ron moved forward, his countenance unreadable. "Hey, Karen, it's good to see you after so many years. We thought we'd share in the joy of your special day," he stated calmly, refusing to be drawn into a confrontation. Karen's cheeks was flushed with wrath. "Joy? You call this joy? You're ruining everything," she exclaimed, her voice breaking through the din of the crowd. The room was stunned into silence. Guests glanced at Karen, their expressions reflecting the horror that filled the air. Whispers and whispers rippled around the room, as individuals exchanged incredulous looks. Keeping my cool, I replied, "Well, Karen, it was you who graciously invited me to your wedding with Jerry, so I thought I'd return the favor and bring along your ex, Ron." The room was alive with murmurs and gasps as the visitors assessed the developing drama. Karen's eyes furrowed at me, and she appeared surprised. It was evident she had not expected such a forceful response. Ron, keeping his calm manner, added, "Karen, we're here to celebrate your happiness. There's no need to make this a scene." Karen scoffed. "Celebrate my happiness? How can you even be with someone like her? Are you dating her now?" I smiled at her scorn and, shrugging nonchalantly, responded, "Like I said, you invited me. I'm just here to honor that invitation and wish you and Jerry a lifetime of joy together. What happens between Ron and me should not be your concern, especially since you're about to marry." Karen's rage heightened the tension in the room. Jerry, who was standing at the altar, came running down, pleading with Karen not to cause a commotion so that they could continue their celebration. Karen pulled him away fiercely. Then, out of wrath, she threw her bouquet across the room. The bouquet flew into the air, leaving a trail of petals in its wake before smashing to the ground. Despite the collective gasps, Karen walked out of the theater, her gown trailing behind her in a whirl of white. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving a sensation of astonishment in its wake. The visitors exchanged perplexed looks, unsure how to respond to the unexpected turn of events. Some people made awkward smiles, while others shifted uneasily in their seats. The mood, which had once been festive, was now tense and confusing. Jerry looked at me angrily and opened his mouth to yell, but my mother urged him to shut up after what he had the audacity to put me through. With a smirk, I told Ron that we should depart, and he nodded in accord. The audience erupted in a maelstrom of reactions, including disbelief, indignation, and whispered conversations. I left the venue with my head held high. The weight of betrayal was removed. The world had witnessed my anguish, resilience, and ability to rise above the ashes of a failed marriage. I don't care if people think I went too far because I've never slept with someone behind their back or ended a marriage. I only gave my stepsister a taste of her own medication. Update 3: I am astounded by everyone's response in just a few days since my previous update. I'm delighted to see that the majority of you understand why I did what I did, and I can appreciate some of your unfavorable emotions. Honestly, I have no regrets about what I did. My stepfather informed me that Jerry and Karen had formally ended their relationship. She refused to marry, no matter how hard Jerry begged with her. I'm guessing this suggests she still has feelings for Ron, and seeing him that day must have reminded her of them. I'm not one to take pleasure in the agony of others, but sometimes the only lessons individuals may learn are the repercussions. Jerry has sent me numerous angry missed calls and messages, but I have chosen to block him. My stepfather chastised me for what I did during my stepsister's wedding, and out of respect, I didn't argue with him much. My mother asked me to give him some time and space, and I agreed. In the aftermath, I've decided to focus on rebuilding my life and discovering happiness within myself. As I deal with the uncertainties of life, I will undoubtedly seek therapy, as everyone has suggested. For the time being, I want to focus on my personal development, finding my passions, and only exposing myself to positive influences. I worked hard, but my parents favored my sister. When they asked for money for her, I refused. My grandparents supported me and cut them off. I believed my parents were finally treating me properly since I had shown myself, but it turned out to be nothing more than a demand for their daughter and her 6 children from 3 consecutive marriages. I grew up knowing I was not the favorite child. My parents were always more concerned about my younger sister Emma, who seemed to have endless opportunities and support no matter how many times she made bad decisions. I grew accustomed to standing on my own 2 feet. I worked hard, paid for college with a combination of scholarships and part-time employment, and eventually found a steady, well-paying job. My parents were never impressed, despite the fact that I did everything on my own. For years, I attempted to brush it off and keep going, hoping that one day they'd admire me for being independent. Meanwhile, Emma's life was a roller coaster. She married young, and her first marriage dissolved after 2 years because her husband cheated. She remarried quickly and had 2 more children, but the marriage ended when her second husband developed a gambling addiction and lost their home. Emma was on her 3rd marriage at the time I started my job, and she had 6 children ranging in age from 12 to 2. Her current spouse works part-time as a delivery driver and is attempting to launch his own business, but they are struggling to make ends meet. My folks have always been there to assist her out, paying for items here and there and making excuses for why she needs a little extra support. For a while, I was too preoccupied with my own life to get caught up in Emma's drama, but then I saw a difference in how my parents regarded me. They became more attentive, reaching out more frequently, congratulating me on my profession, and inviting me over for family dinners. I wondered if they were finally proud of me. Part of me had been hoping for this for years, and I suppose I was willing to believe they were turning a corner. Last month, they invited me to supper. At first, everything seemed normal. We talked about work and caught up on tiny family stuff, and for a brief period, I felt like a member of the family in a way that I hadn't previously. But then the topic moved. They started talking about Emma, how difficult it was for her to raise 6 children on one salary, and how my parents had done everything they could to help but were running out of money. They went on to say how fortunate I was to have a decent job and a consistent salary, that I had no one relying on me, and that I was able to contribute back to the family. Then came the shocker. They expected me to step up and take care of Emma financially. They had a comprehensive plan. First, they asked me to buy her a new 5-bedroom house because her present rental was too small for a family of 8. They wanted me to set up college funds for all 6 of her children, which they argued was only fair given that I was the only one who could afford it. They wanted me to offer her a $5,000 monthly stipend to cover basic expenses as well as seed money to start her own mommy blog business. They planned to receive approximately $2 million up front, followed by continued funding. I sat there, absolutely stunned. They weren't asking for a minor favor. This was a lifelong commitment that regarded me as Emma's financial safety net. In that moment, I recognized that their recent compassion was not because they had finally accepted me as their son, but because they regarded me as a walking ATM for Emma. I informed them that, while I was willing to assist with minor bills or in the event of an emergency, I was not comfortable taking on such a large financial burden. At that point, the family conversation shifted completely. My mother began to cry, accusing me of abandoning the family when they needed me the most, and my father labeled me selfish and ungrateful. They stated I was revealing my true colors and that they were disappointed with who I had become. The dinner finished with them storming out. I believed that would be the end of it, but I was mistaken. Within hours, Emma began assaulting my phone with texts accusing me of jeopardizing her children's future. She even had her children send me messages like, "Uncle doesn't love us anymore." It was unbearable, so I blocked their phone numbers. After a while, I couldn't believe the situation had gotten this bad, all because I refused to fund my sister's life. The next day, my grandmother, my father's mother, called me unexpectedly. Apparently, My parents had been assuring the entire extended family that their successful son would take care of everything for Emma before they even asked me. They constructed an image for everyone of Emma moving into a big new house, of all her financial troubles being resolved, and of me being the one to provide her with everything she needed. Now that I'd declined, they were facing a big wave of embarrassment because the family had expected me to come through based on my parents' premature bragging. My grandparents were appalled when they learned the complete story. They'd always assumed Emma's lifestyle was sponsored by her different spouses, and that my parents helped out because they wanted to, rather than because they'd gone into debt to support her. They were so upset by my parents' behavior that they are now threatening to remove them from their will. They informed me that they would rather leave their estate to me and my relatives, who work hard and do not take advantage of people. As the situation spread around the family, I began to get messages from relatives offering their support. Some of them admitted they had no idea how much I had been dealing with on my own and apologized for not noticing it sooner. My aunt, my mother's sister, even contacted me and apologized for not realizing how differently I was treated growing up. The family dynamics were beginning to unravel, with everyone taking sides, and my parents were not handling it well. My phone started ringing nonstop again, this time with my parents exchanging angry, nasty messages and weeping voicemails. They were upset that I was damaging their family's reputation. They once left a message telling me that I was ruining Emma's children's life and that I would come to regret this decision someday. They'd then go back to imploring me to reconsider, saying things like, "We're family, and family helps each other." All of this has made me feel like a disaster. Part of me feels bad because I was trained to believe that family comes first, and it's difficult to break free of that conditioning. But another part of me is fatigued, thinking how long I've been trying to gain approval from people who just care about what benefits them. The knowledge stings, but I know that giving in now would result in years of financial and mental exhaustion, putting Emma's demands before of my own. Now I'm here on Reddit because I honestly don't know what to do next. Do I hold firm and maintain my limits because I know it's the best thing for me, or is there a compromise I'm not seeing? I could appreciate some unbiased counsel on this problem. Update 1. The situation with my parents and sister has deteriorated beyond my expectations. Just a few days after I told my grandparents the complete tale, they weren't lying about revising their will. They actually followed through, contacting their lawyer very immediately to ensure that my parents were removed from their inheritance. My grandparents had always been the quiet, keep the peace kind, so this wasn't just surprising, it was unprecedented in our family. However, it appears that my parents' years of favoritism toward Emma were the final straw. My grandparents also went above and beyond, convening a family meeting to clear the air. They planned it over the phone so that everyone, including myself, could attend, despite the fact that I live further away. They wanted everyone to grasp exactly what was going on, and based on what they implied, I had a hunch they were going to disclose stuff I had no idea about. The meeting was attended by a few aunts, uncles and cousins, basically, anyone close enough to be affected by this. When the conference began, my grandparents wasted no time. They instantly revealed that they had been paying large sums of money to my parents for the previous many years to aid both me and Emma with our education and future aspirations. They had given my parents more than $200,000 in all, with the expectation that it would be split evenly between Emma and me. I was speechless. I'd pushed my way through college on scholarships, student loans, and various part-time jobs, fighting to manage work and classes, whereas Emma seemed to live on another planet, scarcely lifting a finger and continually being bailed out of every bad decision. All those years, I'd been doing everything on my own while my grandparents sent money that I never received. My grandparents were infuriated. They had expected the money would benefit both of us, but now that they see how my parents had spent it, they feel absolutely deceived. They'd made it clear to my parents that they wished to support both of us, but it turned out that the money had primarily gone to Emma, covering her failed marriages, rent payments, and who knows what else. They requested that my parents provide a thorough accounting of how every dollar had been spent, threatening to bring attorneys if they did not comply. For a family as secretive as ours, this was an unimaginable step, but I could see they'd been tested. In addition, my grandparents indicated that they would establish trust funds for each of their grandkids, including Emma's 6 children. However, they made it clear that the money would be carefully handled by an independent trustee and could only be used for certain purposes, such as education or healthcare. They made it clear that they did not want my parents or Emma to have access to these funds, which was a big relief. At the very least, I knew Emma's children would have a chance at a solid future without my parents depleting those accounts for other purposes. Everything exploded following the family meeting. As they began to put the pieces together, relatives began to contact me one by one. Apparently, This wasn't the first time my parents had taken money from family members in the name of assisting the kids or funding family emergencies. An aunt told me that after Emma's second marriage failed, she loaned my parents a few $1,000s, believing it was for emergency expenses. Another cousin recalls my parents asking for money around the time I went to college, claiming it was to assist me get started, but I never saw any of it. Some of them were furious, believing they had been misled about where their money had gone. Others were simply unhappy, stating they had not known how much my parents valued Emma over me. One of my cousins even showed me screenshots of discussions with my parents after I graduated from college. They had actually discouraged family from attending my graduation, stating that I wanted to keep it small and avoid a major fuss. Meanwhile, I was hoping that my family would come and celebrate with me. It felt like a gut punch to realize how much they'd consciously sought to downplay my accomplishments while continually going all in for Emma. What astonished me the most was Emma herself reaching out to me. She sent a couple long emails, each with a unique tone. In one, she tried to seem as if she had always backed me, saying how she had never known our parents' bias toward her and how she had always assumed we were close. In another, she portrayed herself as a victim of our parents' manipulation, claiming that they had blinded her to the truth about our family dynamics. But what jumped out in each communication was that she always managed to include a request for assistance during this tough period. She tried to behave as if we were now best friends, but it was evident she still wanted me to open my wallet for her. It was difficult to believe. Even after my grandparents took such severe measures to put things right, and despite the family outrage, Emma still managed to make it all about her and what she could get from me. I felt like I was seeing the same narrative over and over. She couldn't seem to grasp the concept of limits or the fact that I was tired of being a constant source of comfort. I was determined not to allow her to manipulate me back into that role. While everything was going on, my folks were busy with their own campaign. They inundated me with voicemails that ranged from violent rants to emotional appeals. In one message, my mother accused me of pulling the family apart, claiming I would regret it one day when I discovered how much I had harmed everyone. My father would then ask me to reconsider, saying we could work things out quietly and it didn't have to be such a huge deal. They even tried to guilt-trip me, telling me that I was placing my grandparents in an unpleasant situation and that I should consider how they would feel if the family divided as a result of all this. But their tactics were ineffective. My grandparents were behind me, and the rest of the family could see my parents' true colors. Some of them even contacted out to say they were proud of me for staying firm. My aunt contacted me in tears, apologizing for not noticing how differently my parents had treated me throughout the years. She said she'd always imagined I was more self-sufficient and didn't require as much assistance, but now she realized I'd been forced into that role because my parents had focused so much on Emma. As the family began to understand what I had been going through, more people came out with apologies or anecdotes about things they had noticed over the years. It was bittersweet. Part of me was relieved that the truth was finally being revealed, that others were acknowledging the sacrifices I had made on my own, but another part of me felt as if I was reliving years of pain and disappointment. All those times I felt invisible, all those times I questioned why my accomplishments didn't seem to matter so much, it all made sense suddenly. However, it did not erase the years of feeling like I was second best. The aftermath of this has been draining. My parents continue to refuse to accept responsibility for any of it. They're so concerned with the family's reputation that they can't see the damage they've done to it. This is just another disagreement that I should drop for the sake of peace, and they are trying to keep the entire thing under wraps. But I no longer feel bad for standing up for myself. I guess I'm finally seeing how crucial it is to create limits, especially with family. If I give in now, it will only mean more years of being used and taken for granted. For the first time, I feel in control of my own life. My grandparents have informed me that if my parents take this any further, they would deal with it. They've made it clear that they don't want me to feel pressured, and they've even informed me that if my parents continue to stir things up, they'll take further precautions to safeguard me. Just knowing I don't have to go through this alone has made a huge impact. Now I'm left wondering what family means at this point. All these years, I believed that being a good son and brother entailed putting everyone else first, sacrificing my own needs to ensure that everyone else was okay. But now I understand that there is a limit, and family isn't supposed to treat you like an ATM or overlook your own happiness simply because it's convenient. As things continue to unfold, I remain steadfast in my decision, but a part of me wonders if I should be doing more or approaching this differently. I'd greatly appreciate any suggestions on how to proceed. There is still so much to comprehend, and I'm trying to take it one day at a time. Update 2. My parents broke their quiet just a few days after my grandparents made their major news about the will. Instead of apologizing or acknowledging they may have gone too far, They sent a lengthy, meticulously crafted email attempting to justify every decision they had ever taken. They didn't just defend Emma, they virtually praised it, describing it as an investment because Emma had always been more family-oriented. Meanwhile, I was classified as self-sufficient and career-oriented, which they assumed indicated I didn't require as much assistance. They went on to clarify that their call for me to step in and fund Emma's life had nothing to do with money. They regarded it as even things out, giving Emma the same advantages they believed I had on my own. To add salt to the wound, they called me selfish for refusing to share my surplus wealth with my family. The email wasn't just words either. They sent a list of everything they claimed to have spent on me versus Emma. I'm talking about everything, including Emma's basic needs such as food, clothing, and housing. They mentioned her wedding expenses, property payments, and even post-divorce therapy. They even mentioned Emma's emotional assistance during her adolescent years, valuing and quantifying it. It was so ridiculous that I recognized they'd been thinking about it for a long time, most likely intending to hurl it back at me. They apparently shared this email with the entire extended family as well, aiming to present me as the selfish one. But it completely backfired. Relatives who had previously remained neutral began contacting me, appalled by what they viewed as an outlandish attempt to tax me for fundamental parenting. Some even apologized for not comprehending the kind of partiality I was dealing with. I believe my parents expected people to gather around them, but all they did was push everyone further away. In addition to this, my grandparents' lawyer became involved. My grandparents had always expected that any money they had given my parents over the years would be divided between me and Emma for our education and other essential costs. They soon discovered that the money had been spent on Emma's marriages and unsuccessful relationships. The lawyer wrote an official letter to my parents asking a thorough accounting of where the money had gone. My grandparents were prepared to take this to court if necessary, and I don't blame them. They felt betrayed, and so did I. It was like a tangled web of deception that had been growing for years, with me on the sidelines the entire time. In a strange twist, Emma's first ex-husband contacted me. He is the father of her 2 oldest children, and while we had never been close, we had remained civil. He told me that he had heard about everything and wanted to express his perspective. He confessed that when Emma became pregnant, my parents coerced him into marrying her, promising financial support as long as he followed through with the marriage. I knew they married quickly, but I had no idea my parents were that involved. Apparently, the majority of the support my parents had provided came from money they had received from my grandparents, money my grandparents had assumed was going toward Emma's and my futures. Emma's ex even apologized, claiming he regretted not standing up to them and allowing the situation to get out of control. My parents quickly noticed the email wasn't having the desired effect, so they tried to backtrack. They wrote a follow-up reply to everyone, explaining that the previous email was sent in rage and should not be taken seriously. But it was difficult to believe that reason given that their email had clearly been planned for some time. They could have printed and dispatched it as an official document, given how detailed it was. Trying to take it back now simply made them appear worse, and no one bought it. Emma had been silent for a few days following the family meeting, but she began reaching out again. Her tone had changed from guilt-tripping to more urgent. She sent a few emails, implying that she had always loved me and had no idea our parents treated us so differently. She even tried to justify her condition, stating she didn't want to burden me but was in a terrible situation with her children. Her texts became stranger, swinging between sentimental memories from childhood and reminders of how difficult life was for her with 6 children and a suffering husband. At one point, she mentioned her husband's economic difficulties and implied that her children were struggling in school due to the stress at home. It was difficult not to feel awful for Emma and her children, but I also couldn't ignore what had happened. She had known about our parents' fondness for years and took advantage of it, leaving me to fend for myself. She wanted me to come in and help her now that she was struggling. Her communications made me feel sad rather than outraged. She was my sister, and her children were completely innocent in all of this, but it was not my obligation to save her from a predicament she had helped create. More family members began sharing their stories. One of my aunts contacted me, apologizing for never saying anything when she observed things weren't fair between Emma and me. She remembered times when my parents plainly preferred Emma and ignored me, but she didn't want to get involved at the time. She also revealed that she had volunteered to help me with my college applications, but my parents declined, claiming that I had everything under control. In actuality, I was managing everything on my own, including school applications and work. My aunt admitted that she had no idea how much I had been left to manage on my own, and she felt bad for not intervening sooner. Family group chats reached a whole new level of awkwardness. Relatives began reaching out, asking if I needed anything or if they could help in any way. It was unusual to suddenly have so many people offering help and sympathy, especially because they'd never been so active in my life before. I loved their goodwill, but it became overpowering. Part of me felt like I shouldn't need their help right now. I'd already gone through the most difficult sections on my own. I mostly thanked them, wondering what else to say. Even my parents' closest friends started to distance themselves. A few people accepted their version of the story, that I was a workaholic who did not prioritize family. But after reading the email and hearing additional information, they began to see through my parents' explanations. Some even apologized, admitting they were wrong to judge me. One of them even indicated that my parents had borrowed money from them, citing family needs. They had assumed it was for necessary costs, but now they were wondering if they had been subsidizing Emma's lifestyle. Despite everything, my parents continued to push. They kept sending messages, arguing that I owed them for everything they'd done for me, that I was responsible for keeping the family together, and that my failure to support Emma was causing the family to fall apart. They claimed I was wrecking everything, damaging their reputation, and endangering Emma's children. It was frustrating because they were ignoring their own acts and pretended that none of this was their fault. For the time being, I'm not backing down. I refuse to be guilted into correcting problems that my parents caused, or to accept responsibility for Emma's decisions. It's still difficult to believe this is my family, that things have gotten to the point where I have to choose between my own well-being and what they call family loyalty. It's a lot to process, and I honestly don't know what the future holds, but for the first time, I feel like I'm standing up for myself and finally being heard. That is, at the very least, a positive step forward. Update 3. The situation has reached an unexpected conclusion. After all of the chaos and hidden issues that had surfaced, my grandparents decided to take a tough stance. They scheduled a final family gathering, this time with their lawyer present. It felt as if a chapter was coming to an end, but there were still so many wounds and unresolved feelings in the air. However, this wasn't simply talk. My grandparents had a plan, and they were not going to waste any more time. They claimed that they had not only revised their will, but were also taking quick action with their assets to avoid further abuse. For years, my parents had been living rent-free in a family-owned holiday home. It was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, but my parents made it their permanent home, expecting it to be passed down to them. But that's over. My grandparents are selling the land and intend to use the funds to establish educational trusts for all of their great-grandchildren. This includes Emma's and my cousin's children. My grandparents also implemented a reorganization strategy to ensure that no more funds were diverted accidentally. They are establishing annual educational grants for any family members pursuing higher education or professional credentials. However, these monies will be administered by an impartial trustee, with no family members participating. My folks were noticeably shaken upon hearing this. Losing the free lodging was terrible enough, but the realization that they would no longer have access to my grandparents' land was a rude awakening. For once, they didn't argue, or at least realized it wouldn't help. They simply looked defeated, which was unusual for my parents given their years of pride and control. My grandparents gave them 60 days to leave the land, with no extensions. The lawyer handed them a signed document, and my parents had no choice but to comply. In a stunning turn of events, my parents admitted to certain financial errors concerning school monies supplied by my grandparents years ago. This was a tremendous revelation, and many family members were shocked. With few options left, my parents signed a formal repayment agreement. Even though I'm sure it would be difficult for them, after they leave the property, they will have to move into a small apartment and severely reduce their lifestyle. It's evident that this is a significant adjustment for them. They've lived well on family assistance for so long that I doubt they ever expected to have to budget or downsize. Meanwhile, Emma appears to have accepted the reality of the situation. Her support system is basically collapsing around her. My parents' free support is no longer available, and she can no longer rely on them to pay her expenses or bail her out if her husband's business initiatives fail. Instead of moaning or trying to guilt-trip me, she is now taking efforts to improve her own situation. She's enrolled in a vocational program for medical billing and coding, which should provide her with a consistent income and the opportunity to raise her children on her own terms. Her spouse has taken on more hours at his delivery job and appears to be making an attempt to contribute to the family's costs. Emma even sent me an email, not asking for money, but simply requesting assistance with her resume. I decided to check into it, assuming it was a little way to help without encouraging her dependence. Hearing from Emma's children has been one of the most shocking and pleasant developments. They contacted me through Emma's father, her first ex-husband. Apparently, my grandparents had planned for them to attend family therapy sessions. They'd been dealing with a lot of confusion about family dynamics and had been caught up in so much drama. Now, With the help of a therapist, they're starting to comprehend the intricate relationships and favoritism they've grown up in. The elder kids apologized for the guilt-tripping messages they had delivered when everything initially began. They said they didn't realize how much pressure their mother was placing on me, and they felt horrible about being used as pawns. I promised them everything was okay and that none of this was their fault. They were just kids, after all, and they were simply following their mother's instructions. I'm confident that treatment will help kids learn that they are not responsible for resolving the conflict amongst the adults in their lives. My parents appear to be adjusting to their new situation, but they are having difficulty totally accepting it. In one final attempt to rewrite the narrative, they began sending me random photos from my childhood, each with captions like, "Remember when we were a happy family," and "Don't forget who's been there since the beginning." I'm not sure if they're genuinely trying to make amends or if it's just another ploy to play on my emotions. Some texts describe how much they suffered to raise me, while others depict them as victims abandoned by everyone they cared about. They've also been telling anyone who will listen that the family has turned against them, presenting the situation as if they were innocent victims simply trying to help Emma. But I believe most of the family has seen through it by now. They maintain their distance, and their interactions are now courteous but distant. As for me, the entire experience has been eye-opening. I had no idea how far the favoritism extended or how much my family had been exploited over the years. My grandparents have been great throughout this process, demonstrating strength and justice that I had never appreciated before. They're taking on the role of champions for the future generation, ensuring that nothing like what happened to me and Emma happens again. The entire process has been a challenging but essential reality check. It has revealed me who actually cares about me and who only sees me as a source of financial assistance. Finally, I want to thank everyone who has supported me. Thank you and farewell.